Good evening, everyone. I have 6:32 with the quorum of commissioners, so I will open up tonight's Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, September 26, 2024. We are meeting in the quiet meeting room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. This meeting is broadcast live on local cable channels 8 and 1072. It's also streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we begin, if you would like to join me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag, please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we start, I'll take a moment of silence. If you would be kind enough to remember all of our citizens that are down in the southeastern part of our country that are facing a very tough night ahead of them with that catastrophic hurricane coming on shore. Thank you. I also saw we have a group from Massachusetts that's on their way down there.
Yeah.
Rescue crowd with trucks and equipment. Okay. First up is public comment. If there is someone here tonight that would like to address the commission on a subject that is not posted on tonight's agenda, this would be the time for that comment. So anybody interested in speaking with us? Doesn't look that way. Nobody's online? No. Good. That's easy enough. I'm going to move to the pre- and post-hearing agenda, and the first item that I will take tonight is the introductions and interview of Neil Larson, who has sent in a request to be interviewed and considered for a position on the commission. Good evening, Neil. Would you like to come up to the desk here, because we're on television, use that microphone, and
Good evening.
good evening. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I've read your letter of interest, and I've looked through your resume, as I believe most of the commissioners have. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us your interests. And
Yeah, my name's Neil Larson. I live at 7 Buccaneer Way in Mashpee. I've been a summer kid since my birth. My parents bought their house at 72 Captain's Row in 1956, and it was the second house in Pirates Cove, right on the water. And I moved down here full time in 1998, and in the neighborhood that I'm in now, Pirates Cove as well. One of the things for me as a child growing up on the bay in the summers, just the loss of eelgrass has been just so disheartening. Rowing my wooden skiff, I said and mentioned in my letter that the destruction of habitat in the bay has been something very concerning for me. It's something that I take very seriously and want to see, what we can do about changing that habitat and getting our eelgrass back in the bay vibrant again. The amount of algae in that bay and it's just totally disheartening. The town. I've been very involved with the town. My wife worked for the Recreation Department for over 10 years. She's recently passed. The town, excuse me, has been very good to us, and I'd like to give back. Reason I'm here.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Sorry for your loss. Thank you.
I'll just go right around the table. We also have a commissioner online that will probably address you with some questions as well. Somebody like to begin?
Oh, sure.
Steve?
So, Neil, do you have any experience in reading plans or dealing with site plans and or construction or?
Yeah, actually,
wetlands?
too, my dad was a designer. I took drafting classes through high school, and actually, the business I own is New England Reaper Graphics. We print, it makes up about 40, almost 50% of our business is CAD printing. And so I'm pretty well versed in reading blueprints and engineering plans.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm one of your customers.
Fantastic, thank you.
So you feel comfortable reading plans and understanding, a lot of the
Absolutely.
technical details?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You familiar with, I assume you're familiar with most parts of town and the water bodies in town and so forth? And,
Yes, sir. Yep,
okay, so no problem doing site visits and
not at all.
and
Yeah.
talking with people and, being objective, looking at,
Yeah, I think I bring kind of a unique perspective that I am a former waterfront land, homeowner. My brothers and I owned 72 Captain's Row for the last several years. So we've actually been here in front of the commission with, dock reconstruction and certain things like that. So I have a little experience with that, but sure, I have no problem talking with people, relating to people, and having to be able to look at both sides of the issue with understanding that, the environment, the ecosystem really comes first.
okay, great, thank you.
You bet.
Richard?
Yeah, I'm sure as you've kind of looked into the Conservation Commission, you obviously kind of realize these meetings can get a little lengthy at times.
Sure.
You have no problem as far as spending the time to put in and,
Unfortunately, I've got a lot of time
Okay.
on my hands these days, yeah. But yeah, it's been something that I had kicked around actually with my wife for years, but, the kids were younger at the time, and I didn't have the time at that point. But I certainly do now.
Great.
Yeah.
Is that it, Rich?
yes.
Sandy?
Just as a welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for your interest.
Sure.
What do you think is one of the major roles of the Conservation Commission in town?
I think it's to ensure that we're conscious in protecting the ecosystem, first and foremost, but having that balanced with, the rights of the landowners and that sort of thing. So having that balance, but first and foremost, making sure the environment's protected. Yeah,
Thank you.
you bet.
Is that it?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Sarah, I'm going to go out to you if you have a question for Neil. Oh, I think you might be muted. She's. Are we? Mashpee Advisory Boards. She's got a long question for you, Neil, but it's not coming through the airwaves. Sarah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Just shake your head yes if you can. Because we cannot hear you. There's evidently there's a glitch somewhere along the line. Your video is fine, but there is no audio. I didn't see if you were muted. It might not be on your end either. I don't know. She's checking her settings. No. I don't think. Okay, while you're checking your settings, and hopefully this can get worked out, I'll ask a question or two, and we'll come back to you, Sarah. Again, Neil, thank you. Thank you for coming forward. We can use help. As you'll see, as you've probably watched some of our meetings, they do get lengthy. We have a lot going on. I noticed in your letter, you said that you said, I think I have the unique perspective to help balance homeowners' interests with the fragile ecosystems we need to protect. I was wondering if you could hypothetically give an example of how you see that working out. How do you balance the homeowners' interest to build infrastructure in a resource area or near a resource area, and at the same time protect that resource area?
Well, I think, you know, I met with Drew, you know, prior to this meeting and went through some of the, you know, some of the different, you know, articles and, you know, the Chapter 172 wetlands and 173 and those sorts of things. So I think it's fairly well spelt out what the rules and regs are. I think it's just having an understanding, you know, where the landowner is coming from, and understanding that perspective, keeping that in mind, you know, understanding that, you know, the environment comes first and what these rules and regs are, as stated. So just more or less having an understanding of that perspective. I don't think that's going to shape decisions.
Sure.
Necessarily, you're kind of following what the articles are spelling out.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do is influenced by not only the Wetlands Protection Act, but also the local bylaws, you know, Chapter 172, Chapter 173 for conservation lands. So the booklet that we used to carry around in paper, I keep it all on my computer because it's so much easier to have it all. It's very large, and there's a lot of regulations to absorb and apply to, as Commissioner Cook said, the engineered plans to make sure everything is synced and working the right way. The town also belongs to the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissioners, and they offer training, courses that can be taken either online, and sometimes they have them live. The course costs are reimbursed by the town. And my question is, would you be willing to not only take your free time to work here at Town Hall and out on the streets, on the sites, but also to take some courses to become certified in the fundamentals of being a conservation commissioner for the town?
Sure, absolutely.
Great,
Yep.
great, that's good to hear. And they're always changing. And we're in a process right now of changing Regulation 25. We're revising the regulation to bring it up to today's standards. It's an old regulation that came on the books in 2005. Here it is 2024, and it hasn't changed a bit, so we're working on that. And it's not an easy task, so there's an awful lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that the average person who's either watching this on television or comes to a meeting, they don't see the tremendous amount of time that everyone on this board is putting in to protect the interests of not only the homeowner, but the environment of the town itself. Great. And I don't think her issue was resolved up there.
We are doing it now. I'm sending Sarah the Zoom link as we speak,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Maybe she'll get back in, but until she does, the select board has a policy, it's 001, where a person like you sends in a letter of interest. Have you come before the commission for introduction and interview, which is what we've done. We all have a preliminary evaluation form that we fill out. All of those evaluation forms will be looked at by the commission, and then the commission will make a recommendation to move your name forward or they may make a recommendation not to move a name forward. That's their decision. Moving forward, you would then be at an upcoming meeting of the Select Board, and they are the appointing authority. They perhaps would have some additional questions they might ask. They may not. That's entirely up to them. And then, once they move on it, you would be appointed if that's how they see fit. And there's a few things you would have to do. Obviously, you have to be sworn in by the town clerk. You'd have to look at the conflict of interest laws for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and make sure you have a certificate that you've taken that course so that you're good to go with us. And that's basically how that process goes out. So if you have further questions that you would like to ask of us, we'd be happy to hear those and answer them if we can. If not, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure I will at some point, but right now, I'm good.
Great, okay. Thank you. Well, thanks for coming in. You're more than welcome to stay and
Okay.
listen to some of the processes that we'll be dealing with tonight, or if you have other
Yep,
plans. then
absolutely.
Certainly can.
All right, thanks
Great.
very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
Nice to meet you all.
Appreciate it. Okay. $6.50. I'm going to move around a little bit in the hearing structure tonight to try to accelerate the process. I want to remind everybody that we've placed what we feel are adequate time limits on hearings, and we're trying to cap those at 15 minutes each. So our secretary will be keeping track of that time, and hopefully we can stay to that limit. The first hearing I'm going to call, this will be very quick, is the hearing for 24 Secaucet Point Road, Joshua and Nicole Delman. It's a proposed construction and maintenance of a new single-family dwelling with a detached garage, hardscaping, landscaping, appurtenances, Title V septic, and construction of a dock with timber walkway. The representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. It's a notice of intent, DEP file number 433313. We have a request from the representative to continue this project. That came in very late this afternoon. I have that on my phone. It's around 5 o'clock this afternoon. But I do not, I guess it's, the date that's requested is October 10th. Do we have a slot on that, or
So that's for
24
Secaucet
Secaucet
Point Road. So yes, that would be for 6:39.
Okay. So I would accept a motion to continue that to 10:10 at 6:39.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Any discussion by commissioners? Just as a point of clarification, I believe one of the hangups with this is it was not filed with the ZBA for special permit.
Correct. It was not filed with the ZBA for special permit, and there was some questions about overall lot coverage when it comes to native vegetation and square footage.
Okay, so some specifics on the topography. Okay. All right, I'll take a roll call vote then if there's no other further questions. Steve?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And we don't have, Sarah's not connected, and I'll
as of
vote
yet.
yes as well. So motion carries with a quorum of commissioners. Thank you. Let me go back to the 6:30 hearing, 184 Fells Pond Road, Jane Liederman and Marvin Sears, proposed raise and replace.
Excuse me, Paul. Thought we were going to do the RDAs.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes. We're going to just walk right down through those and get those off our list.
Now, if I recuse myself from 14 Tulip Shell, do we lose a quorum?
Yes, so,
That being correct.
yeah, so
Okay.
I'll hold on that until
Hold
we.
it now until we get
until
Sarah
we get
back.
Sarah back connected.
yep.
Okay. So I'm going to call the 112 Waiting Place Road hearing for Eric and Don Peterson, proposed renewal of Chapter 91 license and maintenance of an existing pier, ramp, and floats. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. This is a RDA. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant for this project, Eric and Don Peterson. The property is at 112 Waiting Place Road. The purpose for this RDA filing is that the current license for the dock is coming to the end of its term, so it has to renew its license through the state level. So we have to come through this commission to obtain an approval through an RDA for the existing pier so that they can file to extend the license or get a new license for the existing pier.
Okay.
If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Questions?
No.
Rich, Steve, Sandy?
No.
So the overall footprint is staying exactly the same? There's no proposed work on it, it's just the renewal of the license?
That's right. The existing pier is what it is. The applicant is not changing what he's got. We just have to refile with the state to extend the permit or get a new license, whatever it is the state will require us.
And what's the, when does the current license expire? What's the date on that row?
It's tough to calculate because there's been a couple of extensions through state legislation. I know the pandemic had an extension of some 300-something dates. There was another extension back in late 2000s. I believe it was issued in 1990, early 1990s. And their life or their terms is usually 30 years. But after those extensions, we're coming up to those limits.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions. I was just curious on the expiration time. Dan, as agent, do you have any comments to make?
No, not for this project. Not for this
Set.
one, yeah.
Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, I would accept a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, make a motion for negative determination for 112 Waiting Place Road.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion made and seconded on the table for discussion amongst commissioners. Any further questions or concerns?
Sarah's
We're
on.
good?
Sarah's on. Perfect.
Sarah's back. Okay. All right, then I'll take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just going to test for a second. Sarah, can you hear us all right?
She can't see or hear us.
She can't see or hear us,
Yeah,
so we still don't have solid connectivity.
correct.
Then I'll have to hold on
Okay. Yep.
that. Okay.
I see her.
I see her name. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, audio's off.
Oh, she's muted. I see that.
Sarah, you're muted.
Can you, Dan, unmute her?
No, that's Mashpee TV.
That's Mashpee TV.
Yes.
Keep
Oh,
talking.
she's not muted. I'm not too sure.
Yeah. No, we're not hearing, can't hear you. She can see us, but, yeah, I don't, because I know you have to recuse on that hearing, and without hearing her or having her, we wouldn't have a quorum, so
Yeah.
I think I'll bypass that.
How come it says us as audio there? Off, right?
All right, let me,
Okay.
for the sake of time, I'll back up. Those are the only RDAs we have, right? Just
Yeah.
those two?
Yep.
Or was there another one? Yeah, there's another one.
Mine, yeah.
See it way down there, 105 Waterway?
Oh, yeah, for a septic system repair. Oh, yeah.
Let's
Okay.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call the hearing for 105 Waterway. Harold Kiley, trustee, the Jim Kiley Family Trust. This is a proposed septic system repair on property located at 105 Waterway. The representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. It's an RDA. Raul, is this a project that you have for Cape and Islands, or? It's an RDA at 105 Waterway. Do you know anything about that? or-
Is it Mark?
I have an RDA, but it's not one of the
Yeah.
It's the Cape and Islands, that's what it says. Representative of Cape and Islands Engineering.
Is Mark out there?
Table it, I believe Mark is coming.
I thought I saw him out there.
I think
Is
he's
he
out there.
Because we're actually right on time with that, 54.
Yeah.
Right on the button. Well,
Yeah, it's Mark Tibbs.
Yeah. We're throwing him off.
it's always nice to keep people off base, right? We're mixing things up a little bit tonight.
Trying to move some quick ones.
Yeah, we're just trying to expedite the process here. Good evening, thank you for coming in. Can I have your name for the record?
Mark Dibb, civil engineer with Cape and Islands Engineering. So we filed an RDA for just a straight repair of a septic system that had an inspection and was reported as failed due to the separation to groundwater on the existing leach field. We've chosen really the only place that has both the size available and the elevation available to not have to fill in the site, to not have to change grades, to allow the project to be gravity flow. This is a repair of a 4-bedroom system with a microfast IA component, nitrogen reducing IA component, and a flow diffuser leach field. Again, fit in really the only place possible that can be fit without some grading. You'll see the existing grades. There's some spot shots of 9.2, 9.3, a 10 elevation right in the corner, versus like the front, you'll see they're close, but not close enough. You'll see a 7.7, some 8s, and the existing field is over at elevation about 8. So we're just repairing it as required. Nothing's happening to the house. And that's the project. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Questions from commissioners?
I see Mark on Drew's notes that the nitrogen loading calcs were they submitted? One question.
Hope so, but I don't have a copy of those with me. There's no physical changes to the site, and we're adding, reducing nitrogen by way of adding a nitrogen reducing system. It's the best possible thing we can do for the site. If they weren't there, though, I don't know if you could condition it to receiving them and showing that it's under the 19 parts per million. That would be appreciated if you are going to require them. But again, it's the only thing we can do is replace this system and add an IA system to the project.
Okay.
And then the other question, looks like I see the little line. So you removing existing vegetation, trees, shrubs, things like that?
Yeah, there is, you'll see there's an outline. See that circle in the dashes?
Yeah.
There is an existing cesspool there that'll be removed. That's an abandoned cesspool prior to the leach field that is currently in the ground. When we dug the test pits just right in that area, we did find remnants of that. So yes, it is partially in a vegetated area, but again, it's the only place on the property. I think if you walk the property, you'll see there's actually zero lawn on the property. It's a series of landscaping and pervious driveways, and and the area that is open in that back area is mulch. So yes, there is some vegetation, but again, it's based on setbacks, elevation. It's the only location that the system can go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I have no problem with the location. We'd be amenable to put in some plantings around that,
Yeah,
because it's for the loss of vegetation that's there.
you know, if one-to-one is fine for that area of that the leach field in there, could be put basically where that temporary benchmark would be set up, or where the old existing tank was. We could definitely just provide that information to staff and kind of swap out. That would be fine.
Okay. Thanks.
Richard, questions? You good? Sandy?
No?
Okay. So on the plan, Mark, you've got 4.4 feet of clearance from the bottom of the leach field to groundwater?
Correct. That is an adjusted high groundwater based on the Cape Cod Commission adjustment.
Yep.
Yes.
And that, the issue with the system that's in there, it failed because of?
It was apparently less than 4 feet, yeah,
Yeah.
without an IA.
Right.
So even within the standard conditions within an IA, they allow down to 4 feet. So we are even providing a little bit more than that. But yes, even putting the system as far in the corner as we can at the highest elevations, we still are going to request that
Yep.
from the Board of Health.
All right. And so you're going to be looking for a waiver of 0.6,
Correct.
and have you applied for that?
That I confirmed with the health department, that will be, since it is written into the conditions within the DEP approval for this type of IA system, that's what they call an over-the-counter variance or waiver that can be provided to us. I do have that in writing, that since it's part of their standard conditions for that IA system, that does not have to go to the board. Only when it's a repair, just if there was anything going on with the house,
Right.
things like that.
Be a different story.
Yes.
Okay. And Sarah's still not connected, right?
No.
All right, so we won't have any questions from her. Dan, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, for this project, it was really just the nitrogen loading. Everything else, I feel this property is going to be benefited from this. There's not really much. The house, I'm not saying the house is not small or anything, but the house is for footprint size is not too big, so I can't imagine that the nitrogen loading is going to be anything above or even remotely close to 18. So
Yeah.
that was it.
Okay. Is Drew connected or no?
He is not. No, I got to send out the link. It's not made right.
All right. Questions or comments from those in attendance? Okay, hearing none. Before I ask for a motion, then, I'm under the understanding from our conversations that we're going to be looking at some conditions on this if it's going to be approved. I
Yeah.
don't know what kind of motion I'll get. And those would be the mitigation that you had mentioned?
Yeah, mitigation calcs and planting mitigation for the disturbed areas, a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And submittal of the end calcs?
Yep.
That's fine.
Just those two, yeah.
And I don't think I wrote down anything else. That was it.
Yeah, just those two.
With a 3-year mitigation, is that?
Do you want to, I don't know if we would need.
No, that's not on this one, and Drew's comments, right?
I don't think we would need that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that when the motion comes, if there are going to be conditions, that we had them straight before I asked for it, okay?
Okay.
All right, then.
All right,
No
make a
further
motion
discussion.
for 105 Waterway for a negative determination with the conditions of the nitrogen loading calcs be submitted, and then 1-to-1 planning mitigation for disturbed wooded areas be replaced.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Rich. So the motion's made and seconded on the table for any further discussion that we might have. Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
There's a
That-
extension. I don't know if you
Yeah,
wanna
let's get
bang
that
that
done.
one out.
That
Yeah.
would be quick, too.
Yeah.
I'm going to call the hearing for 2 Keeling Way, Mary C. Butler trustee, MCM Realty Trust of 2023. This is a request to extend order of conditions, file number 433143. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. I don't know, Mark, if you had that one or no?
Extension.
It's an extension request.
This is an extension. It was a raise and replace. They never started work or did anything. So they were extending another 3 years because it expires in November 10th, I believe.
Right. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering. Usually we don't present this extension request,
Right.
but the applicant hasn't had a chance to fulfill the work. So he's just asking an extension on the current permit so that he can complete the work,
Okay, so no work's been done at all on the site?
as far as I understand.
Right, okay. And is the extension request for a single year or 3 or what?
This would be for 3 years.
3
This will be
years.
3. Okay. Any other questions by commissioners? No?
I have been to the site, so there has been no work conducted there. I can tell you that.
Okay, I'm just looking at some of the comments here before I ask for the motion. So maybe we'll expand on this. Okay. I'd accept the motion.
Yeah, make a motion to extend order and conditions 43-3143 for 2 Keelan Way for 3 years.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. Motion made and seconded. Any other questions? Hearing none? Steve?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well, so.
Thank you.
Extension will go out for 3. Okay. So now I'm going to back up to these NOIs and start clicking them off as quickly as we can. For those of you that are waiting, I'm going to call this first NOI that we have on our schedule, and then I'm going to recess the hearing for 5 minutes, because we actually started at 5:30 tonight. We spent our first full hour in an executive session on a project, so just to give the commissioners time to go to the bathroom, whatever they might need. I'm going to call the 184 Fells Pond Road proposal by Jane Liederman and Marvin Sears. This is a proposed raise and replace of a single-family dwelling and an IA septic system upgrade on property located at 184 Fells Pond Road. Representative is BSS Design. It's a notice of intent, DEP file number 433312. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. And we did this survey and prepared this plan for Jane and Martin. So you can see on the site, it's fairly tight. It's a pork chop lot. This area was designed with, alternating lots on the front along the road and then a lot back fronting on the pond. And so this is one that just fronts on the pond. And on the existing conditions plan and actually on the proposed plan in a gray line, you can see where the existing house is, which is fairly close to the coastal bank, the top of the coastal bank, and I think I neglected, I think that's probably, well, yeah, I did label it down on top of the coastal and inland bank, which both have 75-foot setbacks. This is kind of a unique situation because the flood zone comes way in from far away, but it just climbs up the bank a little bit, so that makes it a coastal bank in addition to inland. But they're the same setback anyway, because it's steeper than 4 to 1. So we have the 75 and 150-foot setbacks from the land under water body, Fells Pond, and also from the bank. On the existing conditions, you can see that the the house is only about 15 feet from the top of the coastal and inland bank. And now it has moved back and squared off on the lot, and so now the closest point is 20 feet, so it's moved back a little bit, but at the one location, but because it's been rotated, it's generally kind of much farther back from the coastal bank, because it's kind of rotated parallel to the coastal bank now. So they're going to tear the house down. We have all the areas existing and proposed in the coverage table. There's a total of 256 square feet of increased coverage. The calculations come out, so because things are moving back on the property, the mitigation calculations come out not as high, but with the minimum 2-to-1 mitigation, we come up with 456 square feet of mitigation planting required. And so we're proposing the berm, the raised berm along the top of the coastal bank, which will be planted with some of the mitigation planting, and particularly lower growing low bush blueberry and creeping juniper. There are some steps going down the hill, and those will be rebuilt to go up over the berm. And then the other 456, or the total of 456 square feet of mitigation planting will be spread around a little across the front and up the two sides of the house. So on this plan, you see you have the green hatching, which will be the micro clover lawn area, and then all the rest of it is just the mulch and shrub planting around it, and there is a dedicated garden area, which is neither lawn nor mulch, but that's where they'll have their garden in that location. We have the advanced treatment septic system, which is the IA, the micro-fast tank also, and leaching system. It is further, I think, it's about the same distance back as the existing septic system, but it does decrease the nitrogen loading on this. Nitrogen loading calculations, the existing, we calculated about 12 parts per million, and the proposed at 7. I apologize, it wasn't included in the NOI package. Drew emailed, and we sent it to him, and I know there's a couple times we've forgotten that. We'll get them in more routinely than the nitrate loading calculations in the NOI package. But that is the proposal. The house itself is smaller than the existing house, but with the shed, the covered by structures goes up only 1/4% from what we have. But with the patio, it's a little bigger than the existing patio, but I think when you're getting 456 square feet of mitigation planting with not much increase, I think it's a good project. I think we've complied with the regulations. I'll take your questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to commissioners that have questions or comments first.
What type of material are you using for the patio? Is it pervious or impervious?
We hadn't defined that, but if we can make it pervious patio. It's it's all sand underneath, so it's easy to make it pervious. That could certainly be a condition.
Okay, is that it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Steve?
Hey, Tom, for the driveway, so we have looks like about an 8-foot drop from the parking area down to the street level. I don't see any drain down the bottom, and it's going to be asphalt, so during a heavy rainstorm, I can see, looks like a river would be running down there.
Yeah,
Can you-
rains are getting heavier. I mean, it's paved now.
Can you
I
put a
didn't put
drain?
something in, but if it certainly, it'd be good.
Yeah, just keep the, the stormwater, from going out onto Fells Pond Road.
Yeah, I put a trench drain across and
Okay.
put it into a leaching.
All right, and then for the, I see the 7 trees to be removed. I assume, is the brown area mulch on your
Yes.
plan?
Mulch and shrubs,
That's just shrubs, okay, so,
ornamental stuff.
so, are you proposing replacing those 7
We
trees?
do have, well, it's in the notes there, we have, I believe, we have just 2 trees, so I'll plant one on both sides of the steps, so one on each side of the steps, there'll be a smallish tree like an amelanchier or a dogwood or holly, and then one larger tree is like in a red maple in the area to the north of the house, so we're putting 3 in.
Okay, I see maple cluster. Is there a way that along that, along that east property line that backs up to the butter, like we can, instead of just having bark mulch, that we can come up with some sort of evergreens all the way along there to, you know, shield the property and
I know they
to
want to
make up
get a
for
good
trees?
planting done. It's ornamental shrubs and mulch, but it can be, yeah, I mean, they want a screening thing, I just haven't picked the plants. to
Yeah,
go there.
yeah, because then in that, and say, all right, if we have decent screening type of shrubs that can
Yeah.
grow to a decent height, make up for the loss of, you know, those
If there's enough
pines.
sun,
yeah,
they
but,
could,
yeah.
I'd say arborvitae, but if there's enough sun, I know that the cedar are native and arborvitae aren't, but of course, people
Yeah.
like arborvitae
Yeah.
better
Yeah,
as an ornamental along there.
either one, arborvitae, cedar, you know, something that will stay on the property and work well, or holly, I guess. And then the number, I think one of the notes that Drew has about the microclover lawn, it's no more than 10%.
Well, there's lawns in, I thought it was like grass lawns. I mean, I might be mistaken on that, but I thought pure grass lawns were limited to 10%, but then when you put in the
No, the
microclover.
microclover.
hear me?
That was my understanding, but I might be
Hey Drew,
mistaken
this
about
is
that.
Sarah. I can hear you.
Okay, I'm not 100%.
I don't know if they can hear us in the meeting.
10% of the
We can
lot
hear you both.
coverage.
Yeah.
I can
Okay,
barely hear the
great.
meeting too.
You know, I know it's over 10% total, but it's
Sarah, if you put your
clover
phone on
law- it's
speaker, it'll
clover
work better.
mix.
Okay.
Well,
I
I'm
am.
not-
What I was looking at, because
Computer,
the nitrogen calculations came in today, and you're proposing a lawn area of 3,371 square feet on the lot, which is, the total lot was 17,100 square feet, so we're almost at 20% lot coverage with lawn.
Right, but again, that was,
Regulation 31 says you can't exceed 10.
no, and I have the right in my narrative here, but that was my understanding, though, that you could use the clover mix, the microclover mix, in place of a grass lawn.
Right.
But if that's not the case, I mean, you know, we can add more mulch, but if that's, it could be, if it has to be any type of lawn in general, has to be limited to 10%, you know, that's fine. If you know, I can put a condition, we'll
Don't believe the
change it.
regulation specifies any difference, it just says lawn, I believe. I can pull it up, but,
Regulation 31?
yeah. And if that's the case, then the lawn calculations for nitrogen are gonna be off by quite a bit. I mean,
Well, it'd be
obviously, if you
reduced
reduce
more.
it, that's a good thing.
Right, I
I'm
mean,
looking at the
I,
figures that we have, and they won't be correct.
absolutely, I mean, I put it in knowing, intending there'd be a clover lawn, which would need no nitrogen, no fertilizer
I get
for
it.
it.
I
So
get
give-
it, but
Give you the benefit of the doubt, it's still reducing, and if I only had,
oh, I see the final.
1,700 square feet of lawn, then the nitrates would go down even further.
Well, I'm going back to the existing, hold on one second. The existing lawn is 2,792, is that the figure you have?
On the calculations,
Existing conditions, pervious surface.
lawn, 2,792, I have on the existing conditions.
So, I,
I'm not saying things says microclover. difference?
No, it's just as lawn.
Lawn, yeah.
Because those regulations were written long before microclover became a concept to be used in place of a lawn. I just see it as an increase in a lawn area that down the road, some owner may say, I'm going to change this back over to grass and start fertilizing, and
Yes.
so I'd like to see the figures cleaned up. I mean, they're incorrect. I mean, they don't comply with 31.
Is that something that we could approve tonight and have the figures given to the staff, because it is an IA system, so, based
Right.
on that alone, it's gonna be lower, and
There's
then, along
no-
with the changes that, we talked about.
Right, there's absolutely no doubt that what's being proposed is environmentally better than what we have.
Right.
But what I don't want to have on record down the road is a project that somebody can say, hey, wait a minute, I mean, this doesn't even comply with Regulation 31. So I'm trying to make sure, as we move ahead, that if I had seen these nitrogen calculations much earlier, I would have picked up on that lawn area right away, because it's hard to get the square footage off the maps. But you've got it done for us, it's right there, but it just came in today, so.
No, yeah, and I had it in the narrative too,
Right.
that's what we're doing, but they're clover, but that was,
Yeah.
I guess my misunderstanding on that part of it, but.
We'll think about that.
I mean, obviously, I like it if you could do
Okay.
a condition. I mean, if we have to continue it, I'd rather not, but condition it to a maximum
Sure.
10% lawn, any type of lawn.
Yep,
And I can change that easily,
we'll
quickly.
see if that works when we get around to motions. Sandy, do you have questions or
No,
concerns on this?
we got 1 minute.
Okay. Did Sarah get connected again?
She's on the phone.
She's on the phone.
Yep,
Hi,
she
Paul.
can hear us.
Can you hear us okay? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
we can hear you, yep.
Great. I apologize. I missed the majority of that presentation. Would it be possible to get like a 60-second summary?
From the applicant's representative?
Or from you, whichever is most appropriate?
So you're able to hear everything now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear now.
Tom, if you don't mind, this commissioner was disconnected a little bit, so if you could just give like a 60-second synopsis.
In a nutshell, so we're not in a flood zone, but we're in the 75 and 150-foot buffers to land under water body, coastal and inland banks. There is an increase in coverage of 228 square feet, which will require 2-to-1 mitigation, 450 square feet of mitigation planting. We have a earth berm along the top of the coastal bank to prevent any runoff down the slope. And the last we were talking about is propose more than 10% of the lot area as lawn. And so we're just talking about that. So and planting, we're taking down, how many trees did I say? Several trees, but we're planting 3 native trees back.
I see. Thank you, Tom. And this is, just for the record, this is 184 Fells Pond Road?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, great. I did have just a couple of questions. Paul, is this the right time?
Yes, yep, you have the floor.
Okay. Great. And again, my apologies if these have already been asked, but I was a little concerned about the berm in terms of what, how that might impact water retention and movement and absorption on the site. And I wondered if I could get a little more information on the justification for that berm, if it's there for floodplain protection or if it's there to protect the home.
I believe that's in one of your regulations to put a berm along that, when we're sort of in this proximity to a top of a bank, to put a berm to prevent water flow to and down a bank of this type.
That's Regulation 31.
Reg 31?
Yep.
Okay.
It's 31. Okay. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay.
Okay. And then the other question I had was just when I looked at this on the interactive map, it looks like roughly 1/3 of the lot is designated as an area of critical environmental concern, and I wondered if we had any documentation from the Natural Heritage Office or any other specialists that could speak to the impact of what's proposed on any habitat.
I missed that. Yeah, I heard what you said.
Says not within this.
She's not?
This is not, right on the note.
I didn't see that. I check, I don't know if you
Yeah,
pull
this,
up a GIS or something, but it's,
so this property itself is not in the ACEC, and I'm not aware of it having any endangered species heritage around it. Fells Pond is fairly dominant with housing, so.
Okay. Let me check where I saw that. I did see it on the map layer. See if I can find it.
I don't know if I can pull that up here.
Okay, well, in any event, that, and I did hear Paul speaking about the lawn calculations and how that impacts the nitrogen, and I would just put forth that I'd rather see an amendment to the plan than condition that on a permit this evening. I'd rather see that wrapped up before we sign off on it.
Can you repeat that last piece there, Sarah? I didn't hear that.
Sure. I would rather. I agree with you, Paul, about the recalculations needed for the lawn area, even if we are proposing a native clover mix. And I personally would like to see that on a revised plan before we issue a permit, rather than issue the permit with that as a condition.
Well, we could actually state a condition where the permit will not be issued until those corrections are made. Would that satisfy your concern on that?
I would prefer to see it first. And again, forgive me if there were other concerns that I missed hearing, but
Okay.
you know, I'm just one vote here. So.
Anything else, Sarah?
No, just wanted to redirect. I am here right now on the Mashpee Interactive Town Map, Priority Habitat Cape Cod, areas of critical environmental concern, and I'm looking at the lot up close, 184 Fells Pond Road, and actually about 50% on a rough estimate is included in that layer, and it actually extends into the existing structure.
Yes, I see that on the map as well, Sarah.
So
This is
on the
the
Mashpee GIS map, the ACEC is looking to go all the way into just Fells Pond, and it looks like this property and the property next to it have about 40 to 50% of the lot in it. So if there is a continuance tonight, I think that should be looked into as well.
well, the ACEC in this location is defined as the flood zone. And so if it shows it going all the way in there, it's only because the misalignment of a layer. I mean, there are definitions to the ACEC, and the highest the ACEC goes inland is to the flood zone.
It's the green. This is,
Okay.
this is 184.
Yeah, it's definitely have to be
That's the
something
lot.
that
It's right into the house.
definitely has to be looked into, because our map is showing the ACEC is coming up further than the flood
This
zone.
is elevation 32.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's,
CEC goes up 32 feet.
we have them, they're maps, there's a set of 3 maps that show
Priority habitat.
definition
So then,
of it. and that's,
ACEC
you know,
down in
it's-
Montesquieu,
you
isn't
could probably find it online now, but it's not there. It
I don't
does
go by
not,
GIS all
does
the
not
time.
go
It's just
beyond
like
the flood
a
zone.
guideline.
yeah.
You know, I go by.
It would be the first time I've seen it, if that's the case. If that's what it is doing, because on the
Yeah.
map it's indicating that it is. So if you could just get that, look into that and get that confirmed, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Dan, is there any comments you would like to make?
No, not really. The biggest thing is just having the patio areas be pervious, which most of them are, if not all of them. And then the mitigation for the trees. being proposed to be taken down. That's all. If it can go to 2-to-1 mitigation, that would just be a good thing to see.
If we go to what?
A 2-to-1 mitigation for each tree coming down, you know? If something like that would just be better to see for the site, that's all. So, and if you have to reduce lawn, you're going to have more than ample opportunity to put some trees in.
Yep.
Okay.
This is Drew. I just have a clarifying comment. If
Yes,
it's
go
okay.
ahead.
Go ahead, Drew.
So ACEC is not the same as rare species habitat under natural heritage. There is an overlay on GIS that shows natural heritage jurisdiction, rare species, priority and estimated habitat, and ACEC. They're not the same. And this area is not mapped as rare species habitat. So I just wanted to clarify the difference between ACEC and rare species habitat. And that's not to diminish the importance of ACEC and the investigation into that further. It's just a distinction between the two. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Drew. I think I read Regulation 14 a little too quickly, but I do hear, yes, I see what you're saying, and it looks like the Department of Environmental Management, DEM, would be the ACEC authority here. So thank you for that clarification.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
So we're good with that issue, Sarah?
Yes, although I do have some pretty deep concerns about this. I'd like to get some clarification on that as well before we move forward. So,
Okay. All right. Questions from people in the audience on the project? Hearing none. Before I call for a motion, I know there's the lawn issue, microclover, whatever it's going to be, the mitigation issue, which Dan has brought forward, the issue that Sarah has for this
Yeah, do you want me to go
ACDC
through all the
delineation.
conditions?
I'm just, in terms of deliberating, I'm wondering if it should be continued. All this up.
So
Just throwing that out there for consideration.
I'm fine making a motion with conditions, because like you just said,
Right.
nothing's going to get issued until all these conditions are met,
Yeah.
right?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I agree with that.
You agree? Okay.
Okay, so
accept the motion.
make a motion for closing issue for 184 Fells Pond Road with the following conditions. 2-to-1 mitigation for trees to be removed, no more than 10% of the lot to be lawn or microclover lawn. The nitrogen calcs to be revised based on the lawn coverage. All proposed patio areas must be pervious. Stormwater runoff management by a trench drain down the bottom of the driveway to handle any runoff coming down the driveway to keep it off the street. Submission of a signed 2-year mitigation monitoring and maintenance contract between the owner and a certified landscaper or horticulturist or wetland consultant. And then we mentioned about planting, instead of ornamental shrubs, evergreens along the east property line with that mulch bed, and to just determine where the ACEC line is located. Because I know the GIS, they say right on it.
The
it's-
layer.
Yeah, it's the layer is an engineering layer. I think there's some provision on GIS that says
Right.
on it, yeah,
Right.
yeah, for accuracy or
Disclaimers,
whatever it is,
exactly.
yeah.
But you want to condition that to be accurately delineated.
Yeah, if it is evident there, since it was brought up by Sarah and,
Yep.
guess for all of us, say, for the homeowner, Tom and us, say, okay, is there an ACEC there and where is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And was there a condition on native vegetation?
I had 2-to-1
Said
mitigation
evergreen,
for
said
trees, yeah. We work with staff
The
on,
ornamental planting should be of a native variety, right?
yeah, Tom mentioned cedar, right?
Well, all around the house, or, I mean,
No.
I'm talking specifically along like a screening thing on the east property.
Screening
line.
on the east property line, yeah.
Okay. All right, I want to get these all straight before I, okay. So that's your motion, and those are your conditions.
Correct. Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. So we now can deliberate on this if we're inclined to do so, or I'll call for the vote. Any questions or comments? Sarah, from you?
No comments other than I really would like to see this continued with all of those issues resolved before we close an issue. So,
Okay. My understanding, and certainly Dan or Drew could clarify this, that the permit would not be issued until all these conditions are met.
The permit would be issued within 21 days, but on the order of conditions, all of these conditions would be on as the very first bullet, like a new bullet.
Right.
Right after the description. And then they wouldn't be able to construct or even achieve a building permit from conservation's approval until all those conditions are met. So there is a lot on here, but they would all be on the very first. So until those conditions are met, they couldn't even,
So no work commences.
there'd be no work commencing, there'd be no sign off of a building permit from conservation. Yeah, so they couldn't do that until they have that done.
Okay?
All well.
and all of those conditions have to be monitored and approved by our conservation staff. Is that right? So this would be.
Some of the conditions would be monitored and by conservation staff, while the 2-year mitigation contract would be from a licensed horticulturalist professional. And, yeah, and the changes to the plan obviously would be from the engineer from BSS, so.
Okay?
Right. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Okay, any other questions or comments before I call for the vote? We're good? Okay,
This is Drew, and I concur with Dan's recommendations.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Steve?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
No.
Okay, and I vote yes as well, so the motion does carry.
Thank you.
Those conditions will be met before anything begins.
I'll get the changes done quickly.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, because we've been here for several hours already, so we'll come back at, let's say, 7:45.
So next one is Tulip Shell, so you want to do that next while we have Rich, right? And Sarah?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
because you have to recuse on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, those two should be, that one should be definitely done.
So, Dan, what I mentioned to Paul yesterday is, I've spoken with Mr. George about his project. He hasn't hired me
Thank you.
at all.
We're
No,
gonna do Tulip next, just to get that one, and then we'll go back on track.
because we have a quorum issue coming up.
So just to be 100%, I've only spoken to him on the phone. I'm going to meet him on Saturday, but he hasn't hired me yet.
George, which property is that?
That's Tulip Shell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he wants to do a tear-down rebuild.
I can see that. I've talked to,
Yeah.
I think I probably talked to him honestly on the phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to give you, so you know what's going on.
First,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
24
Paul said just to be
Secaucet Point
above
Road.
award 100%.
Yeah, I'm moving all over the place tonight.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I was out there yesterday, yeah.
24, yes.
Oh, yeah. I saw that new, they had the hardscape and the
Yeah.
redone, and I was like, oh my goodness, that is,
I saw that. But then you looked at the plan says brick.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I noticed it right away, and I was like, this will be up for, Chapter 91. They're not gonna worry about that. That would be on the commission to worry about it.
Right.
That's why I was like, okay, we'll see what happens there. Yeah. So, that blew me away. I was not expecting that.
No, I mean, that's awful high.
That's very high, and that would mean that all of Dean's Pond cannot have docks. So that is something I have to look into myself.
Well, this would be a good thing to get delineated
Yeah.
besides the
Absolutely.
layer. Layers are off, but
And if it turns
they're
out
typically not way off. I mean, they're fairly close. And that's, I mean, if this is off, this layer should be out here somewhere down the banking, right?
you see where it came in from? It came in from a marsh off of, I think, is that Jacob's Pond?
the stream that goes
Yeah, didn't even expect that.
I see it now, yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, but see, I use your GIS to look up clients all the time. And I look at a property line that shows it like on top of like their house, but when you actually get to the segment, oh yeah, it's like 15 feet away.
15 to 20 feet away is what I find.
Yeah, it's off.
I did confirm that with IT too. They said, they're like, we don't even know what it's off, but it's 100% off. I was like, all right.
I gotta get that language for that 173. I'd like to move on that if we can.
Yeah, that would too.
A lot of conditions on that.
Yeah, they're gonna have a heck of a time meeting them.
It's quite the house. That'd be a nice Halloween house to go and.
That's why I said to Drew. I was like, oh man, they should have a haunted house here before they
I
come
got
home.
some great pictures.
That's
of it.
awful.
How about the growth on the rear roof line? I got some great pictures of that. Oh my God. It's the worst I've ever seen. You think it leaks?
Do you think there's things living in there?
That was, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a tough shape. How does anyone let a piece of property like that? I guess they're just not there, right?
I couldn't find it for the longest time. I could not
We were
find
on
that
the
driveway.
wrong lot. There were guys cutting trees, and I said, "Excuse me, what are you guys doing? We haven't even had the hearing yet for this." And I'm talking to the guys, and I turn around and look at the building. It says 186 because 184 was up behind it.
It's all behind it, yeah,
I
yeah.
walked up the driveway that said 184. I saw the house, and I figured, well, how come they're cutting down all the trees?
I get
It was
calls-
funny.
I get calls all the time in that area,
Yeah.
because
Oh, I
jurisdiction's so
bet you
wonky
do.
around there.
Yeah.
It's so wonky, so.
Yeah.
So moving things along, pretty good.
Okay. So we'll do that tulip one right now.
Okay.
That way, we still have connection with Sarah. You want
Yes.
to just ask her if she's still there so she can hear?
Check. Oh yeah, they're still there.
She's still there.
Yeah, they're still there.
Can you just ask her if she's okay to hear this? And because we're going down to bare bones quorum here on this one.
Hey Sarah, you all good and still with us? I just want to confirm.
Yes, I'm still here.
Perfect, thank you. We're going to be going into 14 Tulip Shell soon, so we'll definitely need you for the full quorum.
Okay, you got it.
Okay. All right, we're going to go back into open session. I'm going to call the 14 Tulip Shell Way, Michael George, proposed renewal of Chapter 91 license and maintenance of an existing pier, ramp, and floats on the property located at 14 Tulip Shell Way. The representative is Cape and Islands Engineering, and this is an RDA. Before we begin, sir, just hold on one second. Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself because I've been speaking with Mr. George about a future project.
Okay.
So,
So for benefit of the applicant's representative and the audience that's here, Sarah Thornburg, Commissioner Thornburg is online, and with the three of us, we still retain the four-member necessary quorum, okay? So the floor is yours.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant, Michael George, for this project. Similar to my presentation earlier, this is an existing pier, and the license term is about to expire. So what we're asking for is for a permit from this board, so that the applicant or the homeowner can file with Chapter 91 at DEP Waterways to get a new license or an extension of the license for a new term. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Short and sweet. Richard, any questions?
Nope.
No? Sandy?
No.
Sarah, do you have any questions?
Just to confirm, Raul, hello, that no work is proposed at this time? This is just an extension of Chapter 91?
That's right. No work is proposed for the pier. The applicant does have intentions on improvements to the property, but for the house, and that's a different matter. But for the pier, there is no proposed change.
No change. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And on the plan, Raul, there's 2 floats, correct? And the dimensions of those floats are recorded on the plan? And that's something that needs to be moved over to Chapter 91?
So right, on the plan, if you look at the plan, there's a little details to the bottom left corner of the plan, and the dimensions are noted there. So that's how it's going to be presented for the filing with Chapter 91.
Okay. And those are in compliance with Regulation 27, correct?
I mean, this
200
is what
square foot.
exists. It's been what exists for 30-plus years,
Okay,
so there's no proposed change.
okay. All right, thank you. Dan, any comments?
No comments on this. It's pretty straightforward. It's just here to get the Chapter 91, get everything on the record as it is. And we should be good to go from there. So yeah, I know just in the, for this as well, I just want to make sure I know their 4-foot wide access path was very nicely put with white gravel. That's for certain. But just when it goes into the in between native vegetated areas, just to kind of state that sometimes, so there's no encroachment into the vegetated areas. That's all. But other than that, I think this is perfectly fine just to get it on the record.
Okay. Does Drew have anything he wants to add?
Nothing to add, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from those that are here tonight? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion.
So,
It's an RDA, so.
negative determination?
Yep.
Okay. I'm making negative determination for 14 Tulip Shell Way for the license for Chapter 91.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So we have a motion, first by Sandy, second by Richard. Any further discussions? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Richard?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. We're
Thank
all
you.
set. Thank you. Okay, and do you want to tell Steve that we're all set? Let's come back in.
Nice and quick.
Okay. Just looking around to see how many people are here for. Let's see, Brian's down there. Okay, before I call the next hearing, I am going to call the Chapter 173 Conservation Land Bylaws draft of Regulation 1, proposed amendments by the Bylaw Review Subcommittee. The subcommittee did meet this past Monday and spent a considerable amount of time on not only Chapters 173, Regulation 1, but Regulation 25 as well. And the Bylaw Review Subcommittee, 3 members of that committee approved the final draft language for that. I don't believe that the commissioners have a copy of that with them. But the language is approved. We made a little bit of a revision to the title. The title of it said prohibited activities, and we just took the word prohibited out, and it just specifically refers to activities. In terms of the trail camera issue, there's going to, according to the language, have to be a 75-foot setback from any established used trail for the public. So those cameras would not inadvertently be recording the public that's, enjoying recreation without their knowledge or permission. We combined some of the allowable, the non-allowed activities, motorized vehicles and so forth, so we did a little bit of conversion with that. And the language for the inclusion of Aboriginal rights for the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, as was presented by the commission, has been incorporated into that draft as well. So the subcommittee is for all practical purposes, finished with that, and it's ready to come before you when you get your copy of that. So I'm anticipating at our next meeting that we should be able to look at that, come to a consensus of what the subcommittee has put together, and vote to move it along in the process, which would, go to town council for legal review and then back for public hearing and an open meeting for the public to comment on. So I just wanted, because I see a couple of members here that were waiting to either address the commission or comment on it, and rather than have them wait around through several more hearings, I wanted to get that out of the way. So if there's anyone that wants to comment or address us, this would be the time. I don't know, I see Brian's down there. I don't know if he wanted to speak. Good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Brian Whedon, 133 Main Street. I'm here as the chairman of the Mashpee tribe. Unfortunately, our chief, Earl Mills Jr., could not make it. He's out of town, so he did want me to come and speak. Last time I spoke to you about the Aboriginal rights, but I just also wanted to talk a little bit about the co-stewardship or co-management. On November 15th, 2021, Secretary Deb Holland and the Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, issued Secretary Order 3403, which is a joint secretarial order on fulfilling the trust responsibilities to Indian tribes in the stewardship of federal lands and waters. This Secretary's order recognizes that the federal lands were previously owned and managed by Indian tribes, and that these land and waters contain cultural and natural resources of significant and value to Indian tribes and their citizens, including sacred religious sites, burial sites, wildlife, and sources of indigenous foods and medicines. In addition, many of those federal lands and waters lie within the areas where Indian tribes have the reserved right to hunt, fish, gather, and prey pursuant to ratified treaties and agreements with the United States. The Secretary's order also directs agencies to increase opportunities for tribes to participate in their traditional stewardship of present-day federal lands and waters, in the integration of thousands of years of indigenous knowledge and sustainability practices into federal management and operations, subject to the interest of each tribe. While these are not federal lands, I understand that the National Park Service has been rolling this out with tribes. I think this is a good opportunity for us to expand on some of the projects that we already have. The Conservation Department works with the tribe on the monitoring of the herring, with the herring count and the monitor that's up there patrolling that. I think also the collaboration on Chopchick Bog with the Native Land Conservancy. The Native Land Conservancy is doing a lot of great work on the properties that they're acquiring and putting them back into traditional names, sending out people to go do the tours and things like that, to look at the ecology and to teach things and know what medicines and plants are there. I think that also could help us as a town, because I think that this could also open up the possibility for additional grant funds and the opportunity for us to co-manage our town lands. So we can stop the illegal dumping and open up our conservation lands instead of having gates all up around town. I know that's been quite an issue, not just from the tribe, but other members and citizens that do hunt and gather on these lands. You have to call Drew and get, keys. There are some members from the tribe's Natural Resource Commission who also has keys. But that's one of the reasons why the former town manager gated up all of the roads and the access roads, because of the illegal dumping. So I feel like if we did look at the co-management or co-stewardship, not adding that, don't want to add more things, but maybe this is something that we can work on collaboratively to work on this as a town, because I do believe that, we are blocking off some of our most precious land and resources, and we want to make sure that people have access to those as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, Brian, Dan, would you like to comment on some of the research that you've been doing for the cultural easement?
Yes, so there's been a lot of talk about cultural respect easements, things of that nature. I've been doing a lot of research on it nationwide, as well as locally. There's a lot of it in Maine. And there's also different forms of protection, not protections, but increased protections for these properties that also increase the cultural awareness and cultural opportunities, and also participation of tribes. There's things from co-management, co-stewardship, to cultural easements, to actual land backs, things of that nature. All of these have derived from the land back movement because obviously giving land back would be the most ideal situation, but that doesn't seem to be a big thing that's going on. So this gives an opportunity for tribes that are unique to the area, that are original to the area, to have opportunities to access these lands for their cultural purposes or for whatever it may be for their needs, well being a benefit to them, well being a benefit to the town, and well allowing all aspects of people to go on, not just the tribe. And it has been quite the success throughout the country. I know one of the biggest ones I've been aiming at and looking at has been co-stewardship, because that opens up far more opportunities than just managing and maintaining these properties combined together. That brings, as you said, funding opportunities that the towns and nonprofits and municipalities do not have access to. But that also gives the opportunity for the tribe to have far more access to the lands that, quite frankly, they once had full access to. And that's something that should be looked into, and I have been looking into it a great deal, and I have been presenting it to the commission. I have some meetings coming up with tribal members as well as some nonprofits to review this, review opportunities, if they can participate or any of that nature, but also ensuring that whatever occurs is legally feasible to the town, while increasing access to all residents, and most particularly the tribe within town, because this is their cultural homeland. So I have been looking into it quite a bit, and there will be more to come and more discussions with the commission to come forward. That's for certain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted you to hear that, Brian, but more so I wanted the public to hear that. We seem from meeting to meeting to meeting be focused entirely on these hearings for raise and replace buildings or new proposals, and to see questions, comments, and concerns coming forward about our conservation lands always seems to just fall to the end of the meeting. So tonight, and a lot of the meetings moving forward, I'm going to start to move a lot of these agendas around so that there are still people in the audience to hear what's being said. And I wanted you to know that we are doing work in the background. I expect at our next meeting that finalized language, as far as the subcommittee is concerned, it's done. It'll come before the commission, and hopefully that will be voted on in a favorable manner. Okay?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening,
Thanks for waiting.
Have a good one.
Okay. And now I could just take them in order, I guess.
Yeah, and Paul, I will send out a revised draft to all the commissioners based on the most recent feedback, so they'll be prepared for the next meeting to vote.
That'd be great. And,
Yep,
okay, thank you.
no problem.
So I'm going to
416.
move to the next, the next NOI. I was almost going to call 24 that we've already continued. I'm just looking at NOIs now. I'm going to call the 416 Monomoskoye Road proposal from Kirk John Franklin and Don Gordon Franklin trustees, Seaside. This is a proposed construction of a new one-car garage with second-story living space and a small expansion of an existing deck. The representative is Falmouth Engineering. This is a notice of intent, DEP file number 433316. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. The applicant owns the property at number 416 Monomoskoye Road. There's an existing three-bedroom, single-family dwelling on the property. The lot has approximately 23,000 square feet of overall land area. It has frontage on Great River, and the wetland resources in close proximity to the proposed activity include a salt marsh and land subject to coastal storm flowage. The property is a typical residentially developed lot with a house, driveway, deck, lawn areas. It also has the benefit of a Chapter 91 licensed dock as well. The family is growing, and they're need a little bit more space in the house. There is no garage. They would like to have a place to keep one vehicle out of the elements in the winter months. So the proposal is to add a modest 12 by 25 foot one-car garage addition to the west side of the existing house. There is an existing deck, and the addition would lend itself to connecting the deck, existing deck, to the back side of the proposed addition with a modest expansion of the deck as well. All the proposed activities are within previously altered resource area. In this case, it's land subject to coastal storm flowage, AE 11. We are, though, within 150 feet with a portion of the work within 150 feet of the edge of the salt marsh. There's a line on the plan that shows the 150-foot setback, and it bisects almost in half the proposed addition, and it encompasses a portion of the addition in the proposed deck expansion. There's no increase in bedrooms. We went through the calculations for mitigation planting requirements, and have shown on the plan an area shaded in green that is representing slightly more than a 2-to-1 ratio of mitigation plantings. The approximate square footage of the proposed addition, proposed deck, and the proposed driveway connection is just over 700 square feet, and we rounded up to 1,500 square feet on the mitigation proposed, and it's proposed in an area that will supplement an existing buffer to the salt marsh, so the buffer to the salt marsh will be expanded on average about 40 more feet. Even though we're not expanding or increasing the number of bedrooms, we did supply with our application the nitrogen loading calculations, because by removing lawn for the native plantings, we've reduced lawn area by approximately 1,500 square feet, which does contribute to nitrogen loading. The actual addition of the structure and the driveway have a very small but still a beneficial dilution impact, so that the pre-project nitrogen loading is just over 12 parts per million, and the proposed nitrogen loading is about 11.6. So we're going from like 12.2 to 11.6 parts per million. We are on Mashpee Peninsula. The entire peninsula is land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's impossible to maintain the required 75-foot setback from it. So we've, in our narrative, included a request for waiver from Regulation 25. And that's spelled out in the narrative. If you'd like me to elaborate on that, I'm happy to. Subsequent to the application being submitted, we did get feedback from your staff. The staff pointed out to us that there are 2 outstanding orders of conditions. They're about 15 years old, and evidently they slipped through the cracks. So you can't, if you were so inclined to close the hearing tonight, you can't. We have to resolve the outstanding certificates of compliance before you can do that. So I'm hopeful that you receive my application and plans favorably, and I'll be asking for a continuance so I can resolve the matters of the compliances.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from commissioners?
No, I'm good.
Good.
So, yeah. think the mitigation's great. It's a great spot. It's all open grass area, so if you're picking up, a large area of mitigation between the lawn and the salt marsh, so
Right,
I think that's a good thing, so.
okay. Rich, anything? Nope. No, Sandy, you good?
Nope.
Sarah, do you have questions?
I do, Paul. Thank you. Just a couple. So I just wanted to confirm, and I'm looking at the plan, forgive me if I'm missing it, but the driveway here, is this a cobble driveway or is it just cobble edging? What I'm trying to find out is if the proposed driveway connection here is going to be permeable.
The cobble edging is edging an existing driveway that is pervious material. We hadn't really considered what surface to make the connection to the garage. We'd prefer to have that one section be paved so that we're not tracking gravel into the garage, but we would leave that up to the commission but we would like that one section to be paved if possible.
Understood. I think, I won't speak for my fellow commissioners. I would feel a lot more comfortable if it was a permeable pavement, one that maybe would satisfy helping not to track things into the garage, but would also just decrease the amount of impervious surface that we're introducing to this waterfront lot.
Sure.
So that would be, if that's, if the applicants would be open to that. The other thing I wanted to ask about, just given the increase, although it's modest, in roofing, if the applicant would be open to any stormwater management installations that could be added to account for that additional stormwater runoff, maybe some dry wells?
That's a good point. In fact, I noticed that on a previous hearing when that topic was raised by Commissioner Cook. We'd be happy to submit a revised plan with dry wells that can collect the stormwater from the addition and pitch the driveway in the same direction. Since we're going to need to ask for a continuance, we'll have time to make the revision and submit a revised plan.
Great. Thank you. Those are all my questions. Paul, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, Mike, you mentioned in your presentation that there is no additional bedroom being proposed. This is not an increase in flow?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so we have a request then for a continuance.
Could I request the 24th by chance? I'm going to be here that night for another matter.
So October 24th at 6:33, second of the night.
10/24, 6:33.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. Motion made and seconded. So it's 10:24. Any further questions, or at 6:33? I can't guarantee that 6:33 time, because I am moving some things around. You heard what I had to say earlier.
I'll be here early.
Great. Okay, then I'll take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Rich? Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Moving right along. Now calling the hearing for 291 Monomoskoye Road. Jacques N. Morin, trustee, the 291 Monomoskoye Realty Trust. Proposed construction of a single-family dwelling, hardscaping, landscaping, associated utilities, and an IA septic system on property located at 291 Monomoskoye Road. Representative is Down Cape Engineering. The DEP file number is 433314. And for the record, I believe Richard Shaw has excused himself from the hearing.
Yes, so Rich Saul is recusing himself from this hearing.
Okay, and we still have a quorum of 4 commissioners because Commissioner Thornburg is on the line, okay? Good evening, gentlemen. If I can have your names for the record, we can begin.
Good evening. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a professional land surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport, And with me is Brian Wall, who is an accomplished local attorney, in case there are any questions of a legal nature. I think the matter is pretty straightforward, so I'll try and handle it, and then Brian can fill you in if you do have any questions of a legal nature. But we're looking at a grandfathered lot. We had met with Dan on this and discussed some of the relief that's requested. This is out similar to the last one on the Monomoskoye Peninsula. So it is in an area which is land subject to coastal storm flowage. The good news is that there's no other real resources that are very impactful. It's kind of in the center of the peninsula. On the west, there's a roadway and then a house between us and the closer of the two wetlands. And then on the east, there's two roadways. There's a forked roadway, so you have to actually cross two roads and a house lot to get to the water on the other side. So that is not particularly impactful to this particular property. This is a lot which is protected under Mass General Law 48, Section 6, which is over 5,000 with 50 foot of frontage. So there's a very powerful state law that protects the buildability of it. We feel that we're coming in under sort of a maximum feasible compliance situation here where you do the best you can with what you have to get a house and septic on here. The Board of Health has approved this plan. We introduced, as per their requirement, an innovative alternative septic system, a microfast, which is a fairly robust nitrogen-reducing system. That's the same system that was approved across the street closer to the wetland, and that's being infiltrated into the ground near Hamlin Road, as you can see on the plans. There's a house of about 1,000 square foot footprint proposed. When we met with Danny, mentioned that sometimes you like to see the foundation plans. We did submit a kind of a full set of plans. It's a little, about 2,000 square foot. Like I say, it's 1,000 square foot times 2 levels roughly. One of the points that we wanted to stress on this one is that it's not particularly close to the water. If you look in the back of the presentation, there's a little diagram here where you can see the limit of moderate wave action, which is always the dark line with the triangles pointing towards the more hazardous area, and then we're well back of that. So we're in what's described by the FEMA documents. It's a couple of different names, but it's not in the coastal A zone. It's in the minimum wave height action zones. So not the moderate wave, which is oftentimes between the V and the limit of moderate wave action, but it's beyond that. And of course, it's buffered by homes and a number of structures. And this goes to whether or not we can put a vertical wall on there, or whether it would need to be on open piles. And so in this instance here, we feel strongly that a fully FEMA compliant, sturdy concrete foundation with an extensive number of flood vents around will not be subject to erosion because of the very, very limited wave action in a still water flooding zone, and that you could waive that one requirement. There's a few different waivers. Again, Brian did a nice job of going through those. Again, they're more or less of a technical nature, but it's trying to get a house in on a grandfathered lot. There's a few waivers. One would like you to look at is we can certainly go with it with a microclover type lawn. The natural area we meet at 510 square foot, but a lawn we're looking to go about 1,000 square foot, and that's demonstrated on the lawn area. The nitrogen calculations come in quite low with even the 1,000 square foot. So would like to entertain that, and think it's a fairly reasonable number, given that it's not proximate to a resource area. A lot of the times you'd be looking at runoff that might get into the water, and that's simply not the situation here, where there's a large buffer. The narrative goes through some of the items that we've been through, but again, the land subject to coastal storm flowage is one of the big ones. Again, it's in the more limited range of that, backwards to almost out of the flood zone. Your waiver is requested there. We feel that the construction activities will not have a deleterious effect on the wetland resource areas. Again, we're between the 100 and the 150 on most of this, and some of it is outside of 150-foot buffer to wetlands, the salt marsh, which is, again, across the street and beyond a house from our property. And so we go through a brief construction protocol, and the alternatives analysis is not too much. It's a vacant lot, and you know, it's relatively small, and the disturbance is what we feel is just necessary to construct a dwelling, driveway, and a septic system. So we've produced a landscape plan, a grading plan, and a site plan to try and break it out a little bit for clarity on what particular items you're looking at. Again, the Board of Health granted a couple of what I'd characterize as modest variances. We gave them the IA system that I think you folks also appreciate, and some setbacks. They did want a liner installed between the roadway and the SAS was the only change that they had when that was approved earlier in the month. So I would leave it there. I know you have a long meeting and are busy and like to keep these relatively short. Again, small grandfathered lot behind other houses and roads from the wetlands, and I think we've done the best we can with what we have on the property. Be glad to answer any questions.
Brian, did you have anything you'd like to say before I?
The only thing that I would say, Mr. Chairman, thank you, is that I did submit a letter asking for some variances. I was not present at the meeting, but before the NOI was filed, Mr. Ojala met with Mr. Kent, and Mr. Kent identified some regulations that variances should be, or waivers should be requested from. And I did focus on the regulation standards, and they're all in my letter, but I'll just kind of echo what Dan has said.
Yep.
This is a grandfathered lot. It is buildable under state law, so it's kind of tough to meet the standards that are more applicable to bigger lots that are developed today. So the compelling need really is that without the variances, with the waivers, the lot would be unbuildable. So we would argue that that's a compelling need. Your other standard is the degree to which your standards are being asked to be set aside, and we would suggest that it's very minor. As Dan said, we're in the outer buffer beyond 100, but within the 150, so there'll be no adverse impact to the salt marsh, and the property is going to be built to FEMA building code standards, so there'll be a negligible effect on flood control and storm damage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I will go to commissioners first for questions or comments that you might have.
First question is, Dan, I couldn't see anywhere in the plan or in the narrative what the size of the house and the decks and everything is. What's the total
Yeah, so,
size?
and there wasn't a butter letter that kind of overemphasized the size of the house, so we did just double check that. It's 1160 square foot on the first floor and 904 on the second. So that's a total of 2064 square foot.
Okay, so that's the whole footprint, 1,100?
Yeah, yeah.
Looking at the plan, if this is a 5,000 square foot lot, this looks like it's like at least 2,000 square feet with decks and walkways and a garage. So what's the total footprint?
Well, you can see, again, I didn't double check. It is a grandfathered lot, but you've got, being triangular, it's a little difficult to see, but you've got a pretty healthy perimeter there. I was told that it was a 1160 square foot first floor. Now, perhaps he measured to the inside, I'm not sure.
Okay,
but,
so what's the garage footprint? What are the
oh,
deck footprints?
it looks like a garage, but it isn't a garage. It's, because it's a flood zone, well, actually, yeah, it's just a living space.
So do you have building plans for this?
Yeah, we attached them, they're actually in the package.
I didn't see building plans in the package.
Yeah, they're kind of small. Yeah. I don't know what page of the PDF or, oh, yeah. So if you could go to the footprint, that might help Steve out a little bit with, yeah, there they are. And I don't know if you can zoom in for some dimensions, but. Yeah, so it's only, although it looks fairly big, it's only a 16 by 26, that big box. So it's not even as big as a typical, two-car garage.
16 by,
Is it 26 or 20? I believe it's 26.
well, you have 16 by 14, then you have 14 by, let's see, that's 8.
That'd be about
8 plus
400
14 by
there.
24, and then connection, and 16 by 26.
It's going to be about right. That eastern block is about 416, so it's not three of those, So I think the 1,000
14 by
and change is
4, and
relatively
then that's
accurate.
16 by, that's 26.
Count the flood vents and back into it too, because those are 1 per 250.
And then the middle section is, so it's 16 by 12. Okay, and what about the deck and the walkways?
So I can certainly scale them for you if you'd like, Steve, but they're relatively modest, It's, it looks like the end there is probably about 14 by 14, the deck, but it's chamfered or rounded at the end. And the walkways are probably about 4 to 5 feet wide, 4 on the north and 5 on the south. Pretty modest.
You're correct, Dan. Jeff just,
Yeah.
that's what you said.
So it was, we have a, Joe Botello, who did the building designer here, had, first floor is 1160, second is 904, total of 2064, and he did not include the decks, to your point.
Yeah, I'm looking for the total footprint with the decks, stairs, everything that's touching the ground.
Yeah, so, you'd be at 1160 plus, another couple hundred.
Okay, so if I just run the numbers based on these, I'm at 1524 of that footprint there, not including the 14-foot by 14-foot deck, but then there's a, looks like a walkway deck, and there's another deck on the front.
Well, that'll be less lawn if you have a little more roof.
So, okay, so why aren't there accurate numbers on these plans?
Well, I don't think that you necessarily require building plans as your review. I think it was just a courtesy to give you the foundation plan. It's a situation where you're in the outer perimeters of other buffers. It's only land subject to coastal storm flowage. The entire underneath is open to seawater, so it'll flow in and flow back out, so it's zero impact from a coastal storm perspective. And the other resources are so far away that, it'd be hard pressed to impact them if the house was a few square foot bigger or smaller.
But the numbers of the building affect all the, the mitigation, lot coverage, so you're saying that you're submitting one set of plans to the Conservation Commission, and another set of plans to the Zoning Board of Appeals, when all boards should be getting the same
I
plans.
have no idea what you mean by that. No, it's one set of plans. We passed them in.
So, but there's no area calculations on this plan. This is
Well,
mostly a septic plan with, you have landscaping and.
yeah, but
things
it's
there,
drawn
so.
at 1 inch equals 20. Isn't that what you normally do? And, you could scale anything you would like off it very quickly. It's according to the building designer, I would be very surprised. He's a very straightforward guy, and I would not think he would lie. He says it's 1160 on the first floor. It's not gigantic.
Well, if you go back to that foundation plan. On there. So-
Well, the Board of Health reviewed it and approved, the
So
bedrooms.
if you're saying 14 by 16 on the left side, that's 224 square feet. Then you have 14 by 24 in the next section over, that's 336 square feet. And then the 16 by 26 section is 576 square feet. And then
Or
in be-
16.
Yeah, 16 by 26, right, on the section on the section on the right. And then looking at, you have 12'6", but then I don't see a dimension in the corner. So, and looks like it's 16 foot deep. So if I just say 12 by 16 is 192, it's probably a little bit less than that since an angle. And then plus, you mentioned there's a 14 by 14 foot deck is 196. That brings up to 1524 square feet, not including the other two small decks that I mentioned.
The
there.
deck is 10 by 14.
You
I
just said
misspoke.
14,
Yeah,
okay.
well, it's got the rounding of 2'6", but it wouldn't be it would be about,
So
what,
it's
a third of that.
140 square feet.
Yeah.
Even then, it's still, over 1,400 square feet
Well,
of footprint, not including the other small decks.
right, but, I mean, I think the overarching point is, we gotta get a house on here, because it's, it's. you
Mr.
got-
Chairman,
Yes,
time?
we're at 15, okay.
I'm just saying, it's such a large house for a small property, and we don't even have all the accurate numbers, and you're asking for waivers.
Well, again, 1 square foot on this lot would require a waiver, but, it seems to me that it's relatively modest, it's, according to the building designer, 1160 on the footage, on the first floor, and it's fully vented, meets all the FEMA regulations, and even were it a little bit bigger, I don't know the exact impact, since we're very close to the 150 limit. And we've got an IA septic system, low-impact lawn, some mulch areas, leaving it 10% natural, pervious driveway.
All right, in
And
the
there's
interest of
houses all
time-
around it.
In the interest of time, I mean, we've heard this already, so I'm
Yeah.
going to move on to other questions that either you have, Steve, or other commissioners.
Yeah, the only other note that Drew mentions, but this parcel was previously altered, so without permission, so,
Right,
so,
okay, we can get back to that.
okay.
Sandy, do you have any questions?
No, I just think that we need some numbers with all of these waivers that are
Right,
being
definitive
requested.
numbers. Okay, and that's it. I'm going to go out online to Sarah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, the floor is yours for questions or comments.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I do have just a couple of questions and comments. And I just want to echo, my fellow commissioners' concerns about not having these numbers. They are incredibly important to us as we evaluate, in particular, Regulation 25 and compensatory plannings. I'm certainly not going to win any arguments about the buildability of the lot, but I will say, for the benefit of the applicant, that I do have some serious concerns about the scope of the project on an undeveloped lot of this size that is so close to the water, in terms of the implications for impact to the resource areas and the availability of space to either retain native vegetation or implement any compensatory plantings. In looking at Regulation 25, the text that we have here, I've got a million windows. Let me pull this up. We do have a performance standard. So this would be Chapter 172, Regulation 25-2, that reads, all efforts should be made to avoid altering naturally vegetated areas within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Where alterations in construction impact naturally vegetated areas, the following performance standards shall apply. And then if we go down to sub-performance standard A, it says if the commission finds that home construction would alter 500 or more square feet of naturally vegetated areas, compensatory plantings equal to the area of the footprint of the proposed construction may be required. And so I think that having the footprint of the proposal would be incredibly important, as well as a planting plan that would indicate where those can go. I do see that we're keeping 10% in natural vegetation, but we do have a requirement down here in order to consider waiving the standard for A here, that we would need to have 30% of that left in the naturally vegetated state. So I would ask the applicant to kind of revisit those figures and see if they'd be willing to come back with an alternate plan that would address those concerns. And then I think just as a general note, I did find the packet very interesting, in particular the I think it was 8-page address from Attorney Wall with regards to the waiver requests. And I've done this before, and I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So when presenting a waiver request, Chapter 172, 7A3 does provide regulatory guidance to this commission to consider these requests and weigh the relative impacts of the project at hand with cumulative impacts of other projects, as well as existing environmental conditions and resource concerns, which change over time. We have 3 criteria to evaluate. The first is how compelling is the need. So I do understand that, not approving any home on this would on a legal parcel be considered compelling. I understand that. The second criteria is to what degree are normal standards being asked to be put aside. And then the third criteria I really think is not being properly interpreted in the packet. It says, to what degree will compensatory or mitigating measures to offset the impacts of the waived standards result in a significant enhancement of the capacity of the pre-existing resource area and or adjacent buffer to protect the wetland values of Chapter 172, Section 1, and then it goes on to list those values: the protection of public and private water supply, groundwater, surface water quality, control of flooding, water pollution, erosion and sedimentation, storm damage prevention, including coastal storm flowage, protection of fisheries, shellfish, wildlife habitat, and biodiversity and rare species, and the protection of recreation, agriculture, and aquaculture. I'm not going to speak for my fellow commissioners, but I think for me to seriously consider a waiver request, the request and the project narrative in general do need to take into consideration that our primary directive is to protect the essential functions of the wetland resource areas under our jurisdiction. And whether or not somebody gets, the house they want is outside of our purview, but, a multi-page litigious discussion of the applicability or validity of our existing regulations isn't really helpful to me in determining if the applicant has done the due diligence that's required in our regulations to properly assess and present actual factual impacts or enhancements to a resource area that they're seeking to disturb with a project. And it goes on in our regulation to say that mitigation must demonstrate by a preponderance of credible evidence a significant enhancement of the capacity of the pre-existing resource area to protect the wetland values inherent to said resource area. So I understand how this can limit things on an undeveloped lot, but that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, respecting the commission and the process that we're here for and how foundational that is, and to acknowledge that the adverse impacts of development to the functionality of a floodplain and all water resources for everyone in this community, it just demands a little bit more awareness of, presenting a project in a different way. That would go a long way for me. So I'm not going to speak for my fellow commissioners, but I will say we're talking about an undeveloped lot that we're seeking to replace with a 4-bedroom, 2-story, 2,000 square foot house, which is a whole lot of impervious surfaces, a septic tank that's essentially buried very close to the groundwater table, and a structure that all the available science tells us is going to be inundated and unlivable in less than 100 years. So I appreciate that, there are memories to be made for the short term for a handful of people, but I also do think that they do at some stage come at the expense of protecting the environmental resources for both the short and the long term for this entire community. So I'll say that I'm not moved by the petition to grant regulatory relief in this case, given the presentation in front of us, and I wouldn't support granting the waivers as presented unless you come back with a different narrative that shows us that you're considering the impact to the resource area and not just arguing our regulations as if we're in a courtroom. So that's all I have, Paul.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Mr. Chairman, may I say one thing in response to that?
Not right this minute, but I will come back to you. I've listened to an extensive dialogue about numbers in terms of the footprint of this building, which obviously are not on the plan. And I've listened to the concerns for the amount of lot coverage. I've listened to the concerns that Sarah just outlined. And quite honestly, I concur with everything. I mean, the option of going last means that you can't bring up something else because you guys have covered almost everything that really I had concerns about before I even opened the hearing. So with all of that in mind, I will now go back to you, Brian, for whatever
Sure.
question or comment you wanted to say.
Just wanted to respond very briefly to what, and I can't see her, so her name is Thornburg.
Commissioner Thornburg.
Yeah, this is the
yes.
first time I've had the pleasure of appearing in front of Commissioner Thornburg. I don't disagree with her reading of the regulations, but when you say things like your interests are aquaculture and shellfish, all that's true. But the mitigation that we're proposing in the design of this house is aimed at the resource areas that are being impacted. And so we're in the outer buffer that we're calling it. We're more than 100 feet from salt marsh. I'm not a wetland scientist, but speaking to Dan, I understand there's not going to be any adverse impact of the salt marsh. And the impact to the land subject to coastal storm flowage is mitigated by a foundation that's built to FEMA standards that the water will flow through, and the groundwater is being protected by an IA system. So I take a little umbrage with the idea that we didn't put forth a variance request that meets your standards. I will concede that I've argued to the applicability. We have to preserve our clients' rights. We're here hoping that this commission will give the waivers that we're asking for, and that's why we've asked for them.
Right.
But we have to be serious about this lot, and that's why I wrote the variance request the way I did.
Okay.
And if I could correct one thing, the nitrogen calculations are handy to look at. This should be in your file too, but it's a 5,001 square foot lot. We have on here 1387 of the structure. So that is, to Steve's point, a little bit bigger than the 1,100. So I'm not entirely sure if that includes decks, but I imagine it does. Paved area is 500 square foot. Again, that's pervious drive. And then the lawn is 1,000 natural area, which would include revegetated natural plantings as shown in the landscape plan, which was submitted. We've got the native hydrangeas, some ilex, some bayberry and dogwoods, about 2,106 square feet. So it would be our representation that this is a unique lot. It's a thin lot. It's bordered on two sides by hundreds of feet of frontage. It's only 67 feet wide in the back. There's not much value for wildlife habitat here. We are preserving a good corner of it, the 510 square foot, and we can supplement that with bayberry plantings as noted in the landscape plan. And with a microclover lawn and native plantings for the most part around the building. We thought it was not unreasonable and would be worthy of your waiver. Again, it's a grandfathered lot. It's kind of a unique situation. It's one of the last lots in this area, and it's on the other side of houses and roads and buildings from the wet resource areas. So for those reasons, we thought it would be reasonable, but we can certainly continue and give you additional information if that's what you require.
Okay. Let me go to the agents, either Dan or Drew, if he's available online. I don't know if he's still on there or not.
Yeah, I'm still here, Paul.
Okay, we'll
thank you.
start with you, Drew.
Yeah, so I just want to refer to my comments that, and Sarah had mentioned this, that, in citing the regulation that all efforts shall be made to reduce impacts to land subject to coastal storm flow. Given a lot of this size and the proposed size of the house and associated hardscaping, it seems a bit excessive, and I would encourage that the applicant come back with a smaller footprint home to try and reduce impacts and reduce impervious surface in the flood zone, because I believe that a house this size on a lot of this size is going to present a lot of impervious surface given the lot size. So I'll just defer to my comments. And also the issue that there has been some disturbance to this lot as a result of construction of 11 Hamlin Road, which is also owned by the applicant, that there has been some encroachment into this lot from construction activities that were never requested by the property owner as far as those impacts, never made known to the Conservation Department, and I feel that that's pretty relevant in this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dan, is there anything you would like to add, or?
No, just that it is a small lot. It is a roughly 1,000-foot square, give or take, for the foundation. So yeah, my my concerns, I know I laid out with you guys when I had the meeting with you, and all the waivers and everything were applied for, so it'll be left in the hands of the commission. But when it does come to this, if there was a possibility for any revisions for reducing the size of the footprint or improving stormwater management or anything of that on the site, I think that would be an opportunity.
And I'm remiss in
Not now.
noting
Not now.
dry wells are
Not now.
proposed, yeah.
So you're all set, Dan? Okay, I'm going to go out to the public for any questions or comments members of the public might have that are here. Sir, yes, no? If you're going to comment, you'll have to come up to the microphone so that it'll all be recorded. If you guys could just give him the table. And can we start with your name, sir, for the
Richard
record?
Hooper,
Excuse me?
Richard Hooper,
Okay,
305 Monomoskoye.
305, okay.
I want to know what the location of the septic is going to be.
That is on the plan, and
See
you
it
can
right
see where the cursor is right there. Which, if you're looking, if
So
you're
that-
looking at the parcel, it's almost like right on the edge of Hamlin Road
Okay.
itself,
Okay.
not Monomoskoye. We're on the other end of that parcel.
So that septic,
We already have 2 septic systems on our property, so.
Right.
Just
So that
concerned
was
about
your
another
concern,
third.
was the location of
Okay.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I do have a couple of letters, comments to be read into the record. I could choose to do that, but I'm going to hold on those for a few minutes and go back to the representatives, and, because there's no one else here that's commenting. I've got 2 options. I can ask you if you're interested in a continuance to clarify the concerns that are before the commission. You've heard what they are. Or I can ask for a motion based on what's been presented here tonight.
My read of this, of the things is that we can present a little additional information, get those floor plans, some square footages on there, perhaps look at a reduction, and ask for continuance to a date certain so that we could discuss it in further detail. Again, it's a buildable lot, and no one wants to do a taking, obviously, so, but we'll work with you, and if we get a continuance, that would be appreciated.
All right, so then let's look at our schedule. I don't know what your schedules are like, but what do we have for availability, Dan?
so we have October 10th, October 24th, or we can go into November.
November,
Going to November. We only have one meeting in November, correct?
I do believe so, yes.
Because of the holiday.
Yes, we do. So that would be November 14th at 6:33.
okay, yeah, it's
11/14, and I wouldn't go with an exact time.
Okay, yes.
6:30 is always safe, right? That's a start.
We start at 6:30.
Yeah, so most towns just do the start, that's it.
Okay. So I'll accept a motion based on it.
So moved
Thank you,
to
Steve.
November 14th at 6:30.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. So the motion for a continuance to 11/14, made and seconded. Any further comments from commissioners only? Nothing? Sarah, you okay?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So I'll call for the vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we'll continue this on the 14th.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
You're
it.
set on what the concerns were.
Yeah, I was taking notes.
I saw you. But I just wanted to make sure before you left. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Pembroke, I believe is next. Get Rich. I'm going to call the hearing for 26 Pembroke Drive. Heidi M. Delakis, trustee, Heidi M. Delakis, 2017 trust. This is a proposed raise and replace single-family dwelling with decks, hardscaping, landscaping, mitigation plantings, and denitrification Title V septic system. The representative is Merrill Engineers. This is a notice of intent, DEP file number 433315.
Good evening. For the record, Tim Santos from Merrill Engineers representing the applicant. The property is located at 26 Pembroke Drive, currently developed with an existing single-family home, deck, shed, gravel driveways, landscape walkways, an old pre-1995 septic system. We're here, well, I should start with resource areas on or within 100 feet of the property are bordering vegetated wetland associated with Dean's Pond, coastal bank, and the majority of the property is in land subject to coastal storm flowage, AE 15, I believe. Let me just, AE 14, I'm sorry. Applicant would like to tear down the existing home and construct a new home as shown, reconfigure the gravel driveway. We're also proposing to abandon the existing Title V septic system and install a new Title V septic system with a denitrification component, the Vantech system. We have performed mitigation calculations that are shown on the plan, and we're proposing to install them on the bank or as close to the bank as possible in the area that's currently developed with lawn or landscape plantings. All roof runoff will be diverted to dry well as shown on the plan. The majority of this work, or all of this work, is in existing developed areas of the property, either the home, the existing house, gravel driveway, or lawn. House meets building and FEMA zone compliance, and if the board has any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Okay, great. Rather than go first to commissioners for their individual questions, there are several things that I have that have not been provided. The nitrogen loading calculations have not been turned in, so we haven't seen any of that. Let me continue. When we look at the footprint of the house as proposed, it's kind of unclear whether this is smaller or larger than the existing. There are no waiver requests in your packet, whether we're talking a waiver request for the setbacks in Regulation 25 or vertical wall, any of them. So with a lot of that kind of information missing, rather than go through a laborious, question and answer period, which I'm willing to do, I feel as the chair that we're looking at a continuance here. But
I was aware, I did send an email out to Drew and Dan earlier, asking if there were any questions or concerns I should be aware of before I came, and Dan did let me know about Regulation 25 7C, that more than likely a waiver request would be required. We talked about coming to present the project tonight to see what other concerns the board might have.
Sure.
I knew there would be continuance, and I can provide you, I'll request a continuance, but what I'd like to know is what else you need, so that when I come back, if we can just provide you with what you want and get it closed.
I just didn't want to get into like,
I'm already well aware. I should have said that, I'm sorry.
40-minute discussion and then say, we got to,
No.
okay. So with that in mind, for the benefit of the commissioners, if there are other outstanding issues that you want to bring up for Tim, so that he can be aware of that as he does his homework to come back, I'm more than happy to entertain those.
Well, that was some of my questions, was what is the size of the house?
So on the plans, it does have the lot coverage. It doesn't, it says a percentage. It's not the specific square footage. I can tell you them verbally right now, or I can supply it. Whatever's.
So what
it
is-
exists at 1512 is the square footage of the house and the deck, the footprint, and it's proposed at 2,088.
So 1512 to 2088.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, that's just the footprint in the house? Does it
that's-
include the porch on the front?
It includes the porch in the front, correct.
Okay.
And the existing includes the house, the shed, the decks, the landing, steps, et cetera.
Okay. And then one of the things I noticed, you have a first floor elevation at 15 and a flood elevation is?
It's 14.
14, so that doesn't meet the building code requirements.
It's 1 foot higher. It's in an AE zone
Right. So there's a design flood elevation.
of one.
One
So
foot.
the finished floor needs to be 1 foot higher than the current FEMA zone.
The BFE,
So,
It had- it
well,
can be at
the way
15.
I understand it's all framing, all,
We're in an AE zone and not in a velocity zone.
right.
So if it was a velocity zone, then,
2
then
feet.
it's 2 feet, and that's the lowest horizontal member.
right.
In the AE zone, it's the first floor that needs to be higher than the
So-
14, so we've set it at 15.
All right, so does this have a, so is,
It'll
I'm
be,
looking,
it'll be slab on grade with flood vents to allow, if there were any surge of water up at this elevation, to allow it to flood in and flood out.
okay, that doesn't make sense. So if it's a slab on grade,
Well, the slab
So the
on the existing grade, so there's no basement because we're in an AE zone. Okay, so the slab would be at existing grade for what I'll call a crawl space area, for a lack of better terms.
okay, so yeah, that's not slab on grade, yeah. That was my.
Well, it's not a basement, so there's the slab
Okay,
at
so
the
it's
grade.
so it's a crawl space, so what's the crawl space elevation?
It would be it can't be any lower than the existing grade that's currently on the site, so. It's
Okay,
not shown
so-
on this plan, but if you'd like it shown, I'd be more than happy to
Well, I'm
add
seeing
it.
a spot grade of 13.2, so you're saying that the cross.
It can't be any lower than
So
that.
you're
grade.
gonna have a 2-foot
I believe it's a 2 foot maximum
with flood vents
with
in it.
flood vents, correct?
Okay. So, all right, so then what do you have the top of the retaining walls at?
The top of the foundation that
No,
we're building on?
you have stone retaining walls, aren't there?
Oh, so the existing shed is gonna be removed, and basically what they're doing is just continuing that existing stone retaining wall. I believe the top of that wall right now.
So those
is-
are existing.
All the stone wall around the entire property exists. When
Okay.
we remove the shed, we're just gonna connect the wall.
Okay.
So it'll match the
That's why
existing grade.
that's hatched. there.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
great. Okay. And then separation to groundwater on the septic? I think it's on
So
page
right
2.
now, I believe. let me look
4
at
points.
this. I think it says 4.6 to the
6
bottom of the test hole, and there was no groundwater encountered.
What was
Yeah.
the depth, Tim?
It was 4.6 to the bottom of the
4.6.
test hole, and there was no groundwater encountered at that time.
Okay. This is my questions for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Richard? Nope. No outstanding concerns, other than what we have listed there?
Yep, correct.
Okay, Sandy?
I'm sorry.
Any outstanding concerns
No.
other than what we have?
No.
Okay, I'll go out to Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I would like to see when you come back a planting plan, and I wonder if the mitigation plantings that you propose would be able to maybe contour the top of that bank a little bit more appropriately, so we're creating an adequate buffer between the construction and the resource area. And I also would love to have an addition to the project narrative that talks about why we're tearing down a house that was built in 1986 and having to build back another one.
Okay. In terms of a landscape plan, I pulled up the GIS map, and I believe the velocity zone is right on the boundary of this property.
Sure.
And I know
Yeah,
these
so
layers
it's-
can
yeah,
be,
yeah.
can be a little bit off. So I think there should be some real consideration as to what's going to be proposed for the landscaping, because that's a tough area to grow something, especially if we get any kind of storm surge, it's just going to get wiped out. So you might want to give that a little bit of extra thought as to what will be the final proposal for not only the landscape vegetation, but exactly where it's going, because that, boy, that's right on the line. Okay? Anything else that I might have missed, Dan? Would you like to elaborate on anything, or?
No, I just want to make sure that the flood zone itself, where the AE line is, if you could look into that to make sure that's exact.
It follows the.
It follows that retaining wall.
Yeah, so when it's an AE to an X, it follows the actual elevation of that contour.
So that's that's what breaks
That's
it.
elevation 15. So basically, if you look at the top of the plan, it kind of wraps into the wall, then it goes through the wall, and then it comes out the bottom of the wall onto Pembroke.
Okay.
So the only part of this lot that's above the flood zone is, I guess that would be the west and north of the existing stone wall. The rest of it is all below the flood zone.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure with that, that's for certain. And then when it comes to mitigation plantings, I know the planting plan was recommended. So just having something like that, doesn't have to be a whole plan, but having laid out, what's gonna go in the whole
Yeah, I
thing.
mean, basically, we just put a mixture of shrubs that will be put in that highlighted green area. It's in the mitigation planting notes, but I can talk with the owner about maybe saying where they're gonna put each of them within the highlighted green area. That's not a problem.
Okay, absolutely. So yeah, that was my only real thing, was just ensuring that the AE line was appropriate, and yeah, it's very close to the top of the bank, so I am happy to see the house reorienting itself if this project is approved, because I think it's far too close currently to the top of the bank. Not that it's going to be too much farther away, but any foot, any couple feet we can get is always a benefit. And also this area itself of town, it is highly developed, and I also want to make sure that everyone is aware that between the pond and the bank of the house, there is a walking path that's set in stone, literally set in stone. So that is also something that could come into effect if there was concerns about runoff into the resource area. I can say that with these houses around here, and I'm not vouching for the project, but with all these houses around here that I've seen construction done on, nothing has gone over that blue stone path at all. So I want to make sure that is known and that is a developed area. So yeah, other than that, it is an improvement to the site. The house is being reoriented to more appropriately fit the site and support the odd layout of resource areas on site. So yeah, it'll be up to the commission on how they feel with it.
Okay. Drew, did you want to clarify any of the concerns? Tim?
No, Paul, I think you articulated, my comments as far as the information that needs to be submitted when it comes to nitrogen loading calculations. I did want to clarify my second bullet point comment on the house footprint. I meant to really, word that as far as overall alteration compared to the existing conditions. So not just house footprint, but any associated hardscaping, as that will tie into a waiver request if it is, if the alteration is going above and beyond the current footprint of house and hardscaping. And you've made it known about the waiver request from 25C7C setbacks, which is pretty straightforward for the applicant. And then regulation C4 vertical walls noted also. So no other comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're,
Can you just tell me the vertical wall, what regulation that's in, so I know?
that's in regulation 25, and it's under section C, number 4.
Okay, I just know they've kind of been adjusted.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah, the numbers, when we started revising that, the numbers started to move around. We moved them all back to what they were originally, because it caused a little bit of confusion, because the draft is still a fluid document. Okay. So what we need is a time frame.
You continue in state. So you want October, or?
I would request a 10/24 because I won't be here for the other one, so if that's
10/4
possible,
on
because
that,
the rest of it I
absolutely.
can get done pretty quick.
So it'll be October 24th, the 3rd of the night, which is 6:36.
Okay, so moved.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second? Thank you, Richard. Motion made and seconded for the continuance 10/24. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
You as well.
You gotta go, Rick.
Okay. The next hearing is 25 Riverside Road, Carrie Oliver, proposed raise of one of the existing single-family dwellings and construction of a new single-family dwelling with decrease in overall footprint, septic system upgrade, and associated appurtenances. Representative is Cape and Islands Engineering, owner of record Carl F. and Carol A. Oliver, trustees, the 25 Riverside Road Realty Trust. This is a notice of intent that has been continued from 8/22 and 9/12, and the file number is 433308. Good evening again.
Good evening again. Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering. So we had previously presented the project. We have a reduction in footprint. We have an upgraded house to flood zone compliancy, an IA system, new septic system, all the work outside the 75-foot buffer. At the previous hearing, the staff noted some work down in the area that we had identified as salt marsh. When I say work, maintenance, mowing, just typical mowing similar to lawn. At that time, we did some research. I provided some imagery and pictures that, as far back as one of the photos is from 1970, an aerial. The area was the majority of the area was actually a beach. Essentially, that the limit of moderate wave at the flood zone line there. The beach slowly slopes up, and you can see in some of the pictures, you can see in the topo, and then levels off at that point. So we were asked to investigate soil conditions, investigate what we had flagged as the salt marsh line, and then address how to handle moving forward for that maintenance and, number one, stop the maintenance from happening, and just how to move forward. So we did some test pits. There's a diagram in where those test pits were taken, and to be honest, after reviewing this with our scientists, they were rather inconclusive. And I think, showing different layers of sand, loam, and even some layers of peat. I don't have any doubt that prior to 1970, probably in the 30s or 40s or 50s, there may have been some alteration to this lot. The two of the structures, the one we're replacing and the one in front, were built sometime in the 30s or 40s. Based on the soils we found, there could have been some modification to this property well before the Wetland Protection Act. You'll see in the photos, it's very clear that there was beach and then there was upland. So I feel confident that, from about the 70s on, there really was no change in topography, or what did change is actually the salt marsh creeping across the entire beach area. And there were definitely areas of real thick salt marsh, but then there was areas that were just beach. So what we did, both our wetland scientists went out, and then I met again with Drew and the owner out on site, and we came up with two different things. Number one, we moved the salt marsh line slightly. It's not the easiest to see, but it's in line with the flood zone line. That is basically where the beach came up and then levels off to the upland. And second, since we didn't, the test pits were kind of inconclusive in my opinion, we took a more technical approach. Usually the salt marsh is somewhere is kind of identified as by the high tide line. So what I did right now, the high tide line is, per monitoring stations, is at elevation 1.74. And that's the line, there's a line that kind of next one over no, back the other way. It's like an S. Yep, right there. What we did was basically take that elevation and add a factor of safety, you know, to try to anticipate more creep eventually due to sea level rise, things like that. So we basically, there's the next line over is approximately a 1.922 elevation. It's more like a 1.9 elevation. Now that is the one that's more square, right in front of that 18-inch tree. And we've identified as that being the limit of area that we'd like to protect from. And the way we plan to do that is some permanent markers, as shown, the little squares, just in the ground. We walked with the owner. There was no malintent behind the maintenance. They've been there since the 70s. It was beach. They just need to stop doing it, basically. And that'll allow the salt marsh to continue to grow, to fill in. We feel since the project itself did not trigger mitigation, because it is a reduction, we feel that's the appropriate action for this project. You know, it's not your typical violation. You look at those pictures from the 70s, I think every tree is still there. Yeah, you know, it's the salt marsh violating the beach, in my opinion, but in a funny way. You know, we came up with that idea as a way to delineate where to stop the maintenance. And based on all the other factors, the reduction of the building, the IA system, implementation of this new limit of any further maintenance, we feel it does meet the conditions for order of conditions. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay. Thank you. Questions that you may have?
I understand everything Mark said, and thanks for providing all that info, Mark. But these posts in the ground doesn't really meet the intent of what I mentioned at the last meeting, to have something of a hard buffer there, whether it's, you know, row of plants that people can't walk through or mow down, or it could be a split rail fence to keep that, you know, blocked. Because that was, you know, you're talking about, okay, you have a current owner and everything, but, you know, if there's nothing there that's physically there to stop it, will somebody in that family or down the road just go right through and not even pay attention to it? So if there's a, you know, if you take that line where you get the post and say, okay, well, let's put a split rail fence there, everybody knows that, you know, you're not going to go through that area. Or if you put in, you know, 3 feet of plantings, which we've done on other projects, between a wetland and construction, that, especially like some of those ones on Mashpee where there's bulkheads, okay, well, that 4 feet or 5 feet, whatever it is planted with decent height shrubs. Then there's nobody can misconstrue anything about that. You know? These little posts in the ground, people won't pay attention to that. That's, you know, my thoughts on that. So,
Okay.
you know, I agree with your layout, Mark, and I'm fine with that. I'm just thinking down the line, if there's a barrier there, then, you know,
Right.
it's a message we got across. So.
Yeah, people come and go, and at some point, you could have somebody else there that, like you said, just ignores it.
Yeah.
You know, somebody stuck a post in the ground.
Right.
Right.
There's a split rail fence there. You know, water can flow through it. It's a barrier. You have to, somebody wants to do it, they have to climb over it.
Right.
You know, they can't just walk right through it.
Right. Now, would you have a opening in a split rail fence for access?
Yeah, you need an opening to the coastal beach, and then there's a opening for the pier. So, yeah, there'd be an opening there, yeah.
One opening for both?
Yeah, because you see, if you look on the plan, you see the pier is
Yeah.
down there, and the coastal beach is right near the plan, so, you know, you'd have to go from the coastal beach to the pier. That's, I assume they do that now, right?
Yeah, can I?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we do show 2 lines that would be the opening. I mean, it's almost 12 feet wide, but that's where the beach is now, so I think that would be fair.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
All right. Richard?
You said the square footage is actually smaller,
Correct.
and the driveway is going to remain sand and gravel?
Yep.
Is that it?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yep. My only comment is, could we have a fence and some plantings? Could we have the fence and some plantings?
Yeah, could do, yeah.
I just, the fence, if the fence goes down or someone takes it down later on, at least maybe the
Yeah,
plantings
plants.
would be there.
Yep. Yep. Good idea.
Okay. Sarah, I'm going to go out to you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Hi, Mark. I would concur with Commissioner Cook on something other than the posts, and I really like the idea of vegetation, either in addition to or instead of a fence. I think it's really interesting on the plan that, like, a natural, water feature like a marsh or a tide line has got this beautiful kind of curvy, unpredictable thing, and on the plan it's like straight lines. So I don't know if maybe a vegetated buffer would be able to make a more realistic buffer that could match the contour of, that salt marsh that's going to be reclaiming that land. It's been a long time since I was studying soil science, but the peat that you all found a little over a foot down would indicate to me that it was marsh there at one point. So I would just love to see some vegetation there that is going to be agreeable to the landowners and still allow them to access that coastal beach area and then give that salt marsh a little room to move. But that's the only comment that I have.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set. I certainly share the same concerns, and I believe vegetation would be much more preferable than the fence, but if we could get both, why not? I don't know. I'll leave that up to whoever makes a motion.
Okay.
Let me get comments from the agent and the public, and then we'll go from there. Dan, would you like to?
No, what you have down the plan for rectifying the salt marsh, I think is good. When it comes to a fence versus native vegetation, that's going to be up to the commission to how they feel that acceptable. I understand their concerns. We've seen some properties where they just mow straight through, not even knowing, or like this, they just been maintaining it, not even knowing, quite frankly. But that's that. So that'll come down to the commission. Overall, it is a reduction in square footage in the IA system, and they are maintaining pretty much the same buffer, the same distance from the house to all resource areas, so there's no encroachment at all. But I am happy to see that the salt marsh is being tended to, because this area historically, as you have seen, is more predictably salt marsh. So yeah, that's all from me.
Okay.
Mr. Commissioner, could just maybe add some, do we want to mention or figure out what size the fence? Is it just a 4 foot, so like, just so they know what to put in? Is it a 3 foot? Is it custom? What height would the fence be?
I thought what I would wait for is the motion with the conditions, and if a fence survives that, then
Okay.
in our deliberations, we can discuss height differentials or whatever, you want to bring up at that point. I mean, the fence might not even come forward, I don't know. Seems to me, though, it's
Go with
fence and
plantings.
vegetation. Commissioner Godfrey said, why don't we have both?
Well, I was, because I thought Steve,
Right.
brought up the fence, but I'd be just as happy, probably more happy with just vegetation, but.
Yeah.
I guess
I'm thinking of both, it would make like a
Well,
nice
yeah,
looking garden
either-
feature
yeah,
and
well,
more of a
that's
barrier,
true.
but that's,
Either way.
neither here nor there. Let me ask Drew if there's any further clarification you want to make before I go to the public.
I think Dan had another comment, too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Paul. So I did note in my comments that based on the proposal, it doesn't trigger mitigation, though obviously it's the commission's discretion if you want to require vegetation mitigation in that protected area. So my only comment would be that if that is going to be a condition moving forward, that the applicant consult with staff as far as what would be appropriate vegetation in that area. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Dan, something you wanted to add?
No, that was part of it, but I also wanted to make sure that if it is fencing and plantings, or if it's just one or the other, that the homeowner is going to be okay with that, or if, just making sure, that's all.
Okay, let me go out. The public, anything? Neil, anything you want to ask? This is good practice for you. Okay. Before I ask for a motion, Mark, there's something you wanted to say before?
Yeah, I'd like to respectfully request, if there wasn't a condition, that it would be a fence or a vegetated strip. I think we're just trying to achieve a visual barrier, a 3-foot vegetated strip as the condition. And then, you know, if you could preference both, but not require both, you know, I would try to get both installed, but, you know, I'd like to, I know my client does not like the idea of a fence, so I believe he would prefer a buffer. And if I can get him to do both, I'd love to get him to do both, but I just respectfully request the condition to be or. And that's all.
So you would feel like more comfortable with like a row of groundsel bush over
Yeah.
a row of groundsel bush and a fence?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, so with all of that in mind, I'm open to a motion.
Okay, make a motion for closing issue for 25 Riverside Road with the condition to add a 3-foot wide planting bed in consultation with staff for the variety along the line that is shown as the 1.9 to 2.0 future high tide line.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, planting should be close enough so not to physically walk through.
Okay.
I don't know, yeah.
That'll be based on plant selection then?
Plant
Yeah,
selection,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. So we have a motion made and seconded, no fence, and we're back to just a buffer strip.
Yeah,
To be
3 foot wide.
determined by staff. Okay. Any further deliberations or discussions amongst commissioners on the motion?
Just a clarifying question.
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Leave on that 3 foot. Any reason not to make it a little wider?
The consultant recommended 3 feet. I think that's adequate.
So 3 feet as planted, and then it can grow to
Yeah, we'll grow,
much larger.
yeah, we'll grow wider, yeah, over
Yeah,
time,
then
yeah.
they won't be able to maintain it past that point, so it'll just grow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. And let me ask, I'm just curious, what would staff be looking at? You mentioned a variety earlier.
Yeah, there would be a variety. I can say groundsel bush will definitely be part of that, simply because they are phenomenal for growing, phenomenal for establishing themselves, and they are extremely salt tolerant to the point where when you go down, perfect example is 416 Monomoskoye, doing site inspections there. They're all in flower right now, but because of that, you can see how tall and vigorous these bushes are. So they really maintain, they really stabilize the soil, and they are usually a plant that you see in between salt marshes and upland species, is basically what you have. So it'd be groundsel bush, it'd be things like that. So it'd probably be a mix of those with some mixes of lower height vegetation so that you can fill in the gaps. So it's not just groundsel bush planted, 5-6 feet apart. It would be groundsel bush, then something else in between to, really symbolize that do not go across this.
Right.
Is basically what's going down to. Yeah.
And it's my understanding that this buffer strip is not to be maintained, it's just to allow it to grow to its mature?
Correct. Any buffer strip, any natural vegetation that's being planted as mitigation or restoration or anything is to not be maintained.
Just left in its natural
So left in
state.
its natural state. From that point, we'll be able to know if it is being maintained. There is no vista prunings on this property, any permits, so they wouldn't have any pathway to at this current time.
Okay. And we'd allow the 4-foot pathway?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they would have their 4-foot pathway to,
Yeah, there's a 12-foot one is what,
Coastal,
Yeah.
beach
Yeah,
and
because
the
they have the beach
dock.
and then they have the dock, so it'd be around that area somewhere. That's not a problem at all.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify
Yep.
all that.
Do
I
we want a
agree.
maintenance
Groundsel bush is a great
hold on a
selection,
second,
and
Drew,
maybe
wait.
interspersed with some native coastal grasses would be sufficient for this buffer strip.
All right. And you guys can hash that out if this does get approved.
Yep.
Sandy, you had a question.
Do we want to have a maintenance contract? For the
It might not
plantings?
be a bad idea.
Yeah, I would do a 2 to 3 year if you're gonna do a maintenance contract.
Okay. So we'll add that into your maintenance contract.
Okay, let me get that. 2 year or 3?
2. 2's fine.
2.
Yeah, because Dan said it grows quick, so.
Yeah, and the soil down there is fairly wet, so they're gonna be established within, at this point, next spring, they'll have to plant them, or after that, so they'll be established fairly
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, they'll go fast.
Okay. Anything else? We're good? We're done with discussion? I'll call for a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So the motion carries. No fence, lots of bushes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Go all the way down. We're there, right?
Yeah, we're done.
We have 3 certificate of compliances, 7 Slipper Shell Way, 130 Pimlico Road, and 46 Spoondrift Way, and they have all passed inspection, so just wanted to have those read into the record. And we're back to minutes, I believe, our pre and post items. Approval of draft minutes.
Do you have a 105 waterway?
We did that, Drew.
Yep.
Oh, you did. My
Yes.
apologies.
Yep. Yeah, we jumped around a little bit to get the RDAs out of the way, just to move things along.
Yeah, I think it worked really well.
Was that approved, the RDA for 105 waterway?
That was a motion made
Yes, it
by
was.
Steve and seconded by Richard,
With a
Okay,
full,
thank
with a
you.
full vote.
and it carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sure. Yeah, we still have 4, so we're good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
Good night.
The minutes for 9/22/22, we're still not able to move on that because both Alex and Marjorie are not here. The minutes for August 8th of '24, Steve is here, Sandy's here, Sarah's here, and I'm here, so we can move on that. I've looked through them, I didn't see anything in there that
Yeah,
was
I'm good with
much of
them.
an issue. Sarah, did you have any issues with those minutes?
None at all.
Okay, then I'd accept the motion.
So moved.
Paul?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Stacy had noted that in the minutes for August 8th that Rich was identified as a member. And just for clarification purposes, he was an associate member at that time, so I think that should be clarified as far as his status at the heading of those meeting minutes, that he was associate member instead of just member.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep, Alyssa's got that, yep. Okay, good catch.
Okay.
I didn't see that. Okay, motion made and you made the motion.
Yeah.
To accept, you
Second.
seconded it. Motion made to accept the minutes as presented with that one edit on the status for Richard and the member list. Any further discussion? We're good? I'll take a vote.
Yes.
Steve? Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so we've got those minutes in. Good. Water quality issues, anyone have anything that's pressing? Trying to beat that 10 o'clock deadline here.
No, not water quality, no.
Okay. Regulation 25, discussion on draft performance standards. As I mentioned earlier, we did meet earlier this week, and we actually went through everything, Steve, that you had put in, because you met with the PBA, so we wanted to start with that, because there was a lot of information. There was one thing, Drew, I don't know if you remember it offhand, I'm kind of drawing a blank with the late hour. There's something we wanted to have Steve clarify.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Shoot,
what that
I don't
was?
have my
I
notes
don't have
in
it
front of me. I'm trying to remember what that was.
Sandy's
Wait a minute.
digging.
I don't know if I have them.
There was something the three of us just kind of said, I don't really know what he means by that. And I forget what it was.
Yeah, shoot. What I can do is just look through my notes when I get back tomorrow morning and forward that to Steve just
Yeah,
to get some
I'm
clarification.
around, I'll, good part of the day
Don't
tomorrow.
remember off the
so.
top of my head what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandy's looking
I'm
quickly
looking, I don't
here.
know if
She
I
might
wrote
have it.
down.
I don't have that file with me, I don't think.
Something it was about the 100-foot buffer? I have a note here. No, that was just,
I've got so many things that I've moved around here. I don't think I have it. I didn't bring it with me. Okay, we'll follow up on that. But we did go through and we finished your file, and then we went on to, we started with 173, then we did 25, and then we had talked about limiting hearings, but we didn't get into any kind of language or, Drew, what regulation were we looking at for that, to limit hearings?
Also, I believe it was Regulation 6, which is discretionary requirements.
Yes, Regulation 6. So-
Yeah, and what we had discussed was sending off a request for legal services, legal opinion to see what we can do as far as amending that regulation, because I believe that's probably the most relevant for this purpose.
Yeah.
Discretionary requirements, as it relates to capping the number of hearings per agenda, and sending that off to legal counsel to get their opinion on that.
Okay. You want to go ahead and do that?
Yes, I will do that.
Let's get that process going, because it would be nice if we can, I know I mentioned to you, did I send you the one from Sandwich?
You did, and I'll use that as a reference for this legal request. I'll get that off tomorrow.
Yeah, I believe theirs was Regulation 7 or something. I think that was the number.
Yes.
I forget offhand.
Yeah.
Okay.
well,
Yes.
I did have a note under, this is 25.
Yep.
Performance Standard 6. We were going to ask clarification from Sarah to change that wording about sea level rise.
Yes, we did have a quick discussion about sea
Yeah.
level rise. Thank you for bringing that up. I actually found, it's a relatively new site that just came up, and it's sponsored by FEMA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and a couple of other agencies. And the nearest site that they're providing data for is Woods Hole, which isn't that far from us. And the numbers that we have from sealevelrise.org in the draft are dramatically lower than the real numbers that are coming now from the U.S. government. So we may want to go back into that introductory language and alter that. I forget what it was. I think it was 8 inches since 1950 or something. I'm going from memory. But according to the information from the government, it's 7.3 inches since 1993 at Woods Hole, and climbing. I mean, they've got some eye-opening and, quite honestly, staggering numbers in the very near future, depending on carbon emissions and, whether people are going to cut back on what, the main root problem is for climate change. So, yeah, I'll spend some time rewriting a little bit of that, too, for our next meeting.
I'm not sure if what we wanted from Steve was something about the vertical walls and what other walls. Maybe we discussed, PBA had questions too about what did we mean by other walls.
Other walls, yeah, we did kick that around a bit. Again, I'm drawing a blank on it.
I think it was, if I can lend some clarification there, I think the discussion, or at least one of my suggestions was that the standard was set as far as, what type of vertical wall, may cause an adverse impact. So to get into examples of types of vertical walls, because I know that was the question presented.
Right.
And my point was that the standard is already there, so it would really be up to the applicant to demonstrate that they meet that standard rather than putting in examples in the regulation itself. But we kind of left that open-ended. We didn't really come to a consensus on it, but that was the dialogue.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I've got some other thoughts on wording for that for our next meeting as well that I've been thinking about, so we'll come back to that.
Sure.
I looked at the commission schedule that's been proposed, and it's really tight. We have, every other week for a meeting, and this year we had a lot of meeting spaces where there was 3 weeks, so there was that extra week, and we, try to plug in the quarterly meetings. But to plug in our quarterly meetings into next year's schedule, there was no way to get one in terms of not having like 2 weeks in a row of meetings. You would have, the meetings with the hearings, and then the following week you'd have your quarterly, and then within another week you'd be back for hearings. So, it's just the way the calendar is set up this year. As far as the time, we've gone from, I remember it being at 6:30, and then it went to 6, and now we're looking back to 6:30. To me, it doesn't matter, but, the commission's gonna have to settle on a time, whether it's the current time of 6:30, or whether we move back to 6, I don't know.
I think it's hard for people who are working full-time to make a 6 o'clock, because especially they have families and need to get home and get settled and get out again. I think 6 o'clock or anything before that would be not good for them. For me, like you, Paul, it doesn't matter to me, but.
I kind of look across at other boards. I know planning traditionally meets at 7, select board 6:30, we're 6:30, so we're not at, kind of an unusual hour. But anyways, I will put together 4 quarterly meeting dates. I'll just try to spread them out like throughout the season so that, maybe one in January, one in the spring, the summer, and the fall. And I'll plug those in for our next meeting, and we can settle on a schedule. That makes sense?
Yep.
All right, so we're not going to vote on schedule tonight.
I didn't plug in any quarterly ones. Do you want to vote on the
Regular?
The hearing schedule, yeah, if we can get this done out of the way, and then we can look at our quarterlies next
I'll
week.
put the quarterlies together for next meeting.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, why don't we just take care of this?
So-
Because we talked about this last meeting, we pushed it off to this meeting, so, yeah.
We do that.
Yeah.
Paul, I do have a question about that.
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
If I might,
So
you let me
looking
know
for
if
that.
this is a good time.
This is a good time right now.
Okay, great. So if we're waiting to hear back on legal opinion in terms of any, limits that we can set on maybe the number of hearings, or even maybe, how often we can have the hearings, I know we've been kicking around the idea of every 3 weeks. We've been kicking around a proposal by Commissioner Zolo that we convene in person for our quarterly meetings and have the other meetings via Zoom, just to make it a little more accessible, which would, I think, enable, a little more flexibility, at least on my end, from that 6 or 6:30 start time. And then we've been talking about limiting the time that we're in these meetings. So while we have all of these questions, I wonder if we could integrate some of those into the meeting times that we're voting on before we actually vote on them. And if that requires legal counsel to get back to us, maybe we should wait. I don't know if we have a deadline by which we have to have this voted upon and made public. But, I'd really like to see if there's some creative solutions to kind of the trajectory for burnout that all of us are on right now.
Right. I don't, unless I'm wrong, I don't see an immediate hurry, because the first deadline for, filing deadline on the new schedule is December 13th, 2024. And we have several meetings between now and then to finalize this. So if we stay, the dates are solid. It's just a question of the format, the time. I think maybe we should wait. I don't know.
I don't see why, because, okay, we're saying, okay, it's gonna start 6:30, doesn't matter to,
With a
Doesn't matter to
Zoom,
me.
doesn't matter to me either, so.
Just keep in mind one thing, whatever you do, that people are already starting to schedule continuances a month out. So we had one tonight scheduled for November. So if that happens in November, we only have one meeting in December. They might actually start scheduling out to January. So if that's the
Right.
case, then we need to have,
Yep.
we just need to have the schedule on. So I guess what I'm saying is, November would be, I know, for me, I think would be the latest. The November
Yeah.
meeting would be the
Yeah,
latest. to
but we're
confirm
only
it.
picking dates here.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, just
There's a
dates.
time, 6:30, and we're just picking dates.
Yep, just the dates, just so I can say to
Right.
people like, you
Yeah, we're
know,
not saying how many hearings we're having per thing, we're just saying, okay, here's some,
yeah,
here's dates.
I just need dates so I can say, you're continued till January 9th. You
Yeah.
can pick whatever you want,
And
that's all for me.
there's a caveat, I'm looking at what was given to us, and it says draft on it, and it says subject to change. So
Yes.
if we're not happy with that time, we,
And we've done that, we've canceled the hearing,
Yeah.
subject to change, so.
Well,
Yeah,
an additional
just,
question. Oh, go ahead. Did I step on you, Drew?
No, it's okay. I just wanted to add that, I know the question of urgency got brought up, but the sooner we get this calendar confirmed, there are other boards, for meeting space and meeting rooms that are finalizing their calendars. So the sooner we get it in and finalized, we can be assured of our meeting room space.
right.
So there is a little bit of urgency there, even though I know we're still a few months away from the end of the year.
Okay.
In addition to what Dan said, so I would say, just as a recommendation, that this be finalized no later than our second meeting in October, just so we can be assured that we have appropriate meeting space and we're not conflicting with other boards and commissions.
Or the option is to finalize the dates that we have here, and if we want to, if there's an objection to a 6:30, somebody, the majority wants to say, no, let's move this back to 6, we can change the time. We'd have the date
Yeah,
reserved for the room.
That's true too. Yeah, that's definitely an option.
Another way of looking at it.
Well, we've had these discussions before, but isn't there an exception to open meeting law that would actually permit us to continue this conversation via email so that we could get all of the commissioners that are not present to weigh in before we finalize anything?
There is an exception under open meeting law for discussion of agenda. I don't know
I
if,
know logistics was one, I just want to make sure this falls under it.
yeah,
That's all.
I'm solid on the agenda one, but I'm not so sure about this.
Okay.
Well, I think there's still time to reach out to other commissioners. If you want to put it off for a couple of meetings, I think that should be
I would-
sufficient time to solicit feedback from those who aren't attending tonight. But
Right.
just, in the interest of securing, adequate meeting room, which I would hope would be the room you're in tonight for every meeting, barring any unforeseen
but if
circumstances.
we reach out to them, give them till the next meeting, we could do it at the next meeting.
Right.
Not,
I think we should.
It's to say, have a
yeah,
deadline.
that's it.
Yeah, I think we should we're missing 3 commissioners. I know Margie's ill, so I'd like to get feedback from them as well, because there's been a lot of discussion about starting time. I'm fine with the dates. The dates are what they are, but let's have a deadline to approve this schedule at our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, we'll just let it go with that, and I think we're solid on the dates.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just the
that's,
time.
yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
And again, it doesn't matter to me, but I
No.
certainly want to hear from,
Okay, so October 10th will be the final
Yeah.
deadline. We need,
yeah, and then I'll
Right,
plug
vote.
in the quarterly meetings for that as well.
Okay.
So it will be done with the whole,
okay,
Thank-
perfect.
okay? Good. Perfect.
Okay.
That's it for discussion items, so I'll go to Dan or Drew for the updates. If there's things there you would like to fill us in about, please do.
Seems pretty straightforward.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, there's
I don't
no real big changes. The grants we're still facilitating. One of them's looking to start January 1st of this coming year for metric gathering. But yeah, no real updates for that stuff yet.
This milfoil
I
thing
do
is-
have a couple of updates. I just want to make note if that's okay.
Sure.
So, John's Pond, Santua Pond, milfoil. I am going to file for a notice of intent application to address invasive aquatics on Santua Pond, but we did receive notice, an email from a resident on Johns Pond who said he has observed regrowth, some minor regrowth of milfoil on Johns Pond, which, as you all may be aware, was previously treated for milfoil. So the order of conditions that was approved for that treatment was granted for 5 years, and also by the state. Natural Heritage also agreed with that, just because of the unpredictable nature of invasive species. So I'm going to reach out to Water and Wetlands, who did the previous surveying and treatment, and have them go out and do another survey, and if they detect regrowth, have them address that issue and continue treatment. And I'll update the commission on the status of that moving forward. And then, let's see, I think there was one other item I just wanted to highlight. Chopshake Bog Restoration. So the Select Board, at their September 23rd public meeting, did award the recommended bid for construction of the wetland restoration of Chopshake Bog to Sumco, which is an ecological based construction company. And they did submit the lowest base bid. For the time being, we're going to forego the demolition of the bog pump house because that included in the bid actually would have made the overall bid, the lowest bid, go to Speakman Excavating. But we decided to leave that out because it's really not part of the restoration effort, and it can be addressed at a later time. So we went with the base bid, which was Sumco, and the Select Board unanimously approved that bid. So we'll proceed with the next phase, which is drafting up a contract with Sumco and getting started on the actual wetland restoration.
Great. Nice. Okay. Anything else, or we're good?
I think that's it for updates. Yeah.
All right.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a
Do
second?
you have the extension? Did you guys do that? The COC is an extension?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the
And that
extension
was
was
for
for
3 years.
3 years, and the COCs are all approved.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Second?
Okay. Motion made and seconded to call it a night. Any discussion on that? No objection, Sarah?
None.
You're still awake, right?
Yep.
Okay, roll call vote. Steve? Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.